Jags! Sideline! Touchdown! Pass is intercepted in the goal line. Up for the layup! Oh, blocked by James! Curry, way downtown.
And welcome to the 2020 podcast, where hindsight is 2020, but the takes here are always 10 out of 10. If you are returning here, you guys already know what the deal is. You already know what's on the docket every single week. But if you are new here, welcome in. We appreciate you being here. We're a sports-based podcast, primarily covering the NFL and the NBA, which is coming up very, very quickly.
Let's go.
The 22nd of this month. But before we get into all of that, Drew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Got a beautiful Tuesday night of July because it's 100 degrees outside, so it can't possibly be October.
Right.
We got some exciting news, this week. A massive trade in the NBA that went down. That way, the New York Knicks can stomp out those Boston Celtics this season.
Yeah,
very excited for that.
Relax.
And the NFL season is starting to heat up. We got some weird wins this week. We got some weird trade demands. We got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. I'm excited.
Absolutely. And again, if you're new here and you don't know what's going on, so every single week we always have the same docket for the most part, at least to start out the show. Game of the week, which is the Detroit Lions versus Seattle Seahawks. Then we go over the NFL awards for our week, the NFL awards for our week, the defensive player of the week, offensive player of the week, the top 3 rookie performances, and our doghouse of the week, our loser of the week, essentially. Go over our power rankings, and then we get into the other headlines of the week, and then looking forward to the next week as well. So that, again, if you're new here, that's what we look forward to every single week for the NFL season. But again, starting at the top, the NFL game of the week is, once again, another Monday night showdown. Thursday nights, they suck, but the Monday night showdowns, it seems like every single week for our month now into the NFL season, have all been heaters. The Detroit Lions versus the Seattle Seahawks, where the Detroit Lions ended up coming out on top, as we always do, looking at the winners first, the Lions takeaways. Drew, what do you see from this team? A team that has finally, their offense has finally shown up to this point. What do you see from them? What do you like from them from this past week?
This was just, we want to be entertained at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And I'm not talking about these fourth quarter flurries either. I want to be entertained throughout the game.
Yep.
There was games this week. You look at the Packers, they almost made a flurry in the fourth quarter and came back. Last week the Cowboys made a flurry in the fourth quarter. We don't care about that stuff. We don't want a team to get blown out for 3 quarters. We want to be entertained. And if you look at this game, realistically, it all changed very, very early with a DK Metcalf fumble and the Lions score off of that fumble. If you take that away, they basically went score for score, touchdown for touchdown, pass for pass. Well, not really pass for pass because Jared Goff could not miss, but it was a very exciting game, very entertaining to watch. Obviously, that's why it's the game of the week. And it definitely had a strong impact on our power rankings that we'll talk about later, because the Lions, they went out there. The caveat here is obviously going to be who Seattle has played so far, but Seattle's defense was fantastic to start the season. Yeah. They shut down all the lower ranked teams that they played. They got a new head coach out there that's done a really good job with that defense. And super the Lions, I don't know if you knew this, but Jared Goff did not have an incompletion. Matter of fact, Jared Goff on Monday Night Football had more touchdown receptions than he did incompletions. And that's
absolutely a fact. Yep. Yeah, it was really nice to see the Lions offense explode this week. Perfect on the night, 18 for 18, 292 yards and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, stat line did not end there, taking a touchdown catch as well, which was pretty fun to see. Anytime a quarterback does anything else besides throw the ball, if he can make a reception, always fun to see. I also want to kind of highlight that was
the slowest passing touchdown in the history. Amon-Ra was just like, he threw this floater up there, and I felt like Jared Goff on that play, he ran like an 8.74 40 to get into the end zone, and it just majestically flew through the air, and then Goff is just hell of a play call.
It's like Amon-Ra was really thinking about it, and he's like, please don't overthrow him. He's open. And it's like he was overthinking the process the entire time.
I'm sure in real life it was like half a second, but it felt like he was just staring, like, don't mess it up, don't mess it up, don't mess it up, don't mess it up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Something that was a really big positive for the Lions is the lack of turnovers this week, with Goff having to throw an interception in each of the prior games. Him not having one this game is obviously massive. And the prior turnovers that Goff actually did have, I mean, we saw them. They're bad turnovers. There's a lot, honestly, besides this past week, weeks 1 through 3, there was a lot of questions on Jared Goff and his performances and how well he's looked or how bad he's looked to really start the season. And, Goff ends up getting a lot of hate throughout the entire NFL season and the past couple of seasons. I feel like he doesn't really get the love that he deserves. But to start the season, those first three weeks, he really struggled. So he was kind of deserving a lot of the side eyeing of him. But again, kind of at least turns it down a little bit. Goes 18 for 18, looks fantastic. Jahmyr Gibbs recording 2 touchdown runs as the leading rusher, but I think everyone wanted to talk about David Montgomery on the 40-yard reception, absolutely blowing up Devon Witherspoon. I swear I've seen that highlight like 3 or 4 times already, and everyone reacting to it. As soon as it happens, they pause the video and they get up. They're like, God damn, oh, no, holy shit. So looked incredible, obviously, throughout the night. Again, the offense exploding for the Lions is the biggest thing here. Now, the question is if they can continue it. And this is against a Seattle Seahawks team that had 5 of their key defenders out for the night. So how much do you attribute that to the Lions exploding? And how much do you contribute that to the Seattle Seahawks having a lot of really key defenders out? So kind of push and pull there. When you're looking on the other side of it, on the Seahawks side, what do you look at on their side? What went wrong? What looks good still with really them playing their first contender of the entire season?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we had questions about Seattle coming into this. We talked about off air about power rankings and if Seattle was justified into coming into the top 10. They got some really weird stat lines right now. I think they're first in passing yards per game, which is super weird for a Geno Smith led offense. He's been fantastic. Kenneth Walker comes back and has just a massive game for a guy coming off an injury. And even the aforementioned poor Witherspoon, he has been fantastic. I don't know why this has always got to happen when you've been fantastic, but the defense with the injuries, Jared Goff not only was he perfect overall on the night, he was 6 for 6 against pressure. They could not affect anything he was doing. And the thing about the Seattle Seahawks we talked about in the offseason is we talked about this is a team that has a quarterback that can't beat the 49ers, their biggest division rival. And it's when you're in a place where your quarterback can't get you over the hump, it's hard to know if you should move forward with that quarterback. Well, they've come out and they've played really well. And if you look at the stat line, or if you look at the final score, 42-29, it really doesn't show you, again, how close this game was. Like I said,
Absolutely.
DK Metcalf has a huge fumble that kind of changed. Not that I'm putting it on DK. DK is a hell of a player. And then that passing touchdown by Amon-Ra to Jared Goff, it just goes to show you these trick plays and how volatile they can be. Because if you go back to the Sunday Night Football game, if you look at the Ravens versus the Bills, it looks like a blowout on paper, but what you don't see is the Bills had scored and they were going down the field. They were dicing up the Ravens and they were going to go down. And I think they were going to make it. They were going to pull within 3 points or whatever at the time. And they ran this awful trick play, absolutely awful trick play. And Josh Allen, who is a big boy. Josh Allen is a big boy. He got freaking tossed. Like he was, he looked like, who's that little running back on your guys' team? Deuce Vaughn, is that his name?
Vaughn, yeah.
He looked like Deuce Vaughn out there. He just got boom. I'm just like, holy shit. And then the game turned around after that. The Ravens went along to stomp them. These trick plays, they're so 50-50. When you hit them, it just feels like the air is sucked out of the arena when you hit a trick play like that. That's why, chicks dig the long ball and all that stuff. You throw up one of those huge passes, and Jamison Williams, that play that he made, who, just so you know, Jamison Williams is younger than both Xavier Legette, who was he a second round pick, or did he sneak into the first round? He was second round, right?
First pick of the second round.
And he's younger than Ricky Pearsall, who was the 49ers first round pick. This is a young player who's finally healthy, coming into his prime. Jared Goff is hitting him on these crossers. Amon-Ra does what he does. Sam Laporta, who was the best tight end in football last year, hasn't done anything this year, which is scary for teams playing the Lions because he hasn't even stepped up. And they got this two-headed monster at running back. And frankly, the only thing that we could ever say bad about Jared Goff is he's a little slow. You know, he doesn't move well in the pocket. But if you're going to go 6 for 6 against pressure, it doesn't matter. That last night was a Super Bowl winning performance. That type of play is a Super Bowl winning performance. Now, I know they don't think they're getting back there based off of comments from their head coach, but you got an offensive coordinator who's a future head coach in this league. You got Dan Campbell, who's killing it. You got the front runner for defensive player of the year, maybe, in Aiden Hutchinson.
Absolutely.
And you just have an incredible offense right now. So realistically, the Lions are jumped out to a good run. And I know you asked me about the Seahawks here. They got the New York Giants next week, which, let's be honest, should pick up a dub. But then they go San Francisco, Atlanta, Buffalo, the Rams, San Francisco. So that's, if you're picking those teams, maybe, 1 or 2 wins in their next 5. So if they come out of that 3-2, if they come out of that 4-1, if they split the series with the 49ers and pick up wins against the Rams, Buffalo, and Atlanta, I'll change my tune. But they're exciting right now. The schedule's been a little soft. I'm not counting you out, Seahawks fans. I'm not hating just because I'm a Niners fan. I'm just saying, you finally played a good team and you took an L. So this isn't college football. We don't get style points here. An L is an L. So we just got to see it, come out and smack the Giants next week. And then you go into a big Thursday night football game against the 49ers.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be huge. Looking forward to the coming of weeks for those 5 key defensive players to really come back. And additionally, another play that went out, Jordan Love, right in the middle of it. Or Julian Love, excuse me, going out in the middle of the game as well. So wrong team. So that's going to be huge looking forward. Detroit put up 6 touchdowns in a span of 8 possessions. So defense really not looking fantastic there. But Geno Smith setting new career highs in passing yards, 395, and completions in 38, and then attempts in 56. Geno Smith has been fantastic all season. His advanced statistics makes him look like a very, very, very good quarterback. He's really been putting the team on his back, especially with the defense. I mean, they've looked fine, but looked fine against teams that aren't very good. You go against the Denver Broncos, and I'm not very impressed at that point. But, again, like you said, looking at the final score doesn't really tell the whole story. Overall, the Seahawks put up a decent performance with having so many guys out, and then Geno trying to do as much as he can. Seattle had 516 yards of total offense, which is the 12th most in a single game in their team history. DK Metcalf, you already mentioned, but he became the first receiver in team history to have 3 consecutive 100-yard receiving games, 7 catches for 104 yards against them as well. So, and then that's, struggling on defense on both sides of the ball, because the Lions had their fair share on struggles. Carlton Davis was flagged 3 times, their corner, 2 which kept the drive alive and it led to Seattle Seahawks touchdowns. Terrion Arnold, their rookie, which we both love, 3 more defensive penalties on that side, 1 leading directly to a touchdown on the next play. And then Kenneth Walker, you already mentioned, had a monster half against the Lions are supposed to be known for a pretty good run defense, but having a pretty good game, 80-yard outing, 3 touchdowns. So he went for the hat trick on that one. So both sides looking at the defenses a little bit side-eyeing, one having some key guys out, the other one struggling performances from the cornerback position, which we already knew that the Lions were going to have some issues with the corner position moving into the season, and it looks like that is definitely going to persist because 2 rookies are not going to solve all the issues, a la the Philadelphia Eagles as well. So Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw for them, not going to solve all the issues, at least in year 1, even though there is really good flashes of Terrion Arnold. More on him a little bit later, talking about some of those rookies.
Yeah, Gino, he leads the league in passing yards right now. He's got 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. I think some of that's been covered up by the fact that they've been winning. The one thing that I do question just maybe a little bit, a tad with him, not that I'm predicting him to fall back to earth or anything, but he's got like 40 more or 50 more pass attempts than the guy who's number 2 in yards, and he's only in front of him by like 50 yards.
Yeah.
So he's got 50 more pass attempts. So it's stats based out of volume.
Yeah.
And it's fun to watch. I wonder if maybe the Seahawks need to dial it back just a tad and realize, like, hey, listen, quarterbacks generally, he's had a resurgence, but quarterbacks generally don't turn into all pros after 7, 8, 9 years in the league. So I'd really like them to find more of a balance, rely on their defense, and try to do what they have to do. If Gino's going to,
they do that.
yeah, I mean, if he's going to end the season with 20, 24 interceptions, the winning streaks are not going to continue. So he needs to dial back the turnovers a little bit.
Totally agree. Looking at the entirety of week 4, giving out our awards for the week, defensive side of the ball, offensive side of the ball, looking at our rookies as well. And not everyone can be winners around here. Someone has to be the loser, and someone has to go in the doghouse. So looking at the defensive side of the ball first, a lot of great defensive performances. Drew, you and I were texting a little bit back and forth about this one, about which way we're really going to go. I'll go ahead and I'll highlight the linebacker for the Atlanta Falcons, Mr. Troy Anderson, who unfortunately is on the injury report for this week. So we'll see if he plays in the upcoming week. But he recorded 17 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass deflection, and 1 grand pick six. I remember Troy Anderson coming in a couple of years ago. It was almost impossible to find film on Troy Anderson. If you remember from, I think, 2021, about 3 years ago, he came into the league. Almost impossible to find film on him. Came from a smaller school, but he's looking fantastic this week. Again, 17 tackles and a pick six is nothing to scoff at. But again, you bring the tackle for loss and a pass deflection as well. Honestly, a lot of great defensive performances this week. A couple of guys that really deserve a huge shout out. But Drew, for you, who is your defensive player of the week?
Yeah, I mean, I agreed with you. I went with Jaquan Brisker just because of the fact that at the position that he plays, when you have 12 to 15 tackles, when you get out there and you get a sack, when you get an interception, you're just affecting the game at so many levels. And from that, at the safety position is just super, super important.
Yeah.
Those are game-changing players. Those are players where a lot of times, for instance, I can pick defensive player of the week. I could tell you it's Marlon Humphrey, right? Because he is not allowing anybody to have any space against him. Whoever he's covering on the route, they don't throw at him, right? It's Darrelle Revis like, right? But when you're impacting the game, when you're tackling, when you're getting sacks, when you're getting interceptions, and both these players did that this week. It takes it to a next level. Obviously you and me, I know you had a third person on your list. I mentioned Fred Warner, who didn't play the second half of his game because he didn't really need to. But when the 49ers are playing the Patriots and they go down all the way down the field and they kick a field goal, and then the defense gets a stop, and then they go all the way down the field again, and they get a field goal. Now it's 6-0, and you're feeling kind of weird, right? You're just like, what's going on here? And then Fred Warner jumps up in the air like Superman, grabs the ball, falls on his ass, picks it up, runs towards the end zone, slow as shit. I don't know what happened to his speed. He had to have been tired as hell. And then he like Superman, I don't even want to call it a Superman dive. It was like a Superman flop into the end zone. And then the funny thing is they had to get all the footage of him freaking out and celebrating on the sideline because he just kind of like wandered off the field. He was so tired at that point.
My oxygen, man. Need my oxygen.
And he is PFF's highest rated player so far this season on defense. So shout out to my boy, of course. But when you have Anderson, those, like Fred, those are game-changing plays.
Yeah.
Troy, he had 17 tackles. Was that the number on it? Do you have it in front?
Yep.
That is a stupid amount of tackles in a football game. An absolute stupid amount.
Absolutely.
How many did Brisker have? 12 or 13?
12.
Now, generally, you don't want your safety having 12 tackles. That's generally not a good sign. Just like you don't want your corner leading your team in tackles. But who cares? You know, they got the dub. You know, they took home the dub. Both these players did. And so I'm not making a passionate defense on why it's Jaquan Brisker instead of Anderson, right? I'm just shedding light on another player that went out and balled out this week.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then on top of that with Jaquan Brisker, too, he had another pick that was called back for a penalty on the defensive side of the ball. There was an end zone, horrible throw by Matthew Stafford. Not sure what was going on there, but another
That's called Stafford.
Another pick that was called back for that. Another guy I wanted to highlight, the other guy that you mentioned that I had on my list, Levante David, old-ass Levante David, somehow doing it every once in a while. 8 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, a pass deflection, a quarterback hit, and a forced fumble on the game against the Philadelphia Eagles. So playing all over the place. Dude's still doing it. You wonder how he's still getting all these contracts. And this is why he's still getting those contracts, is because he's making plays like this.
It's so important to pad the stat sheet. I got to tell you, as a 49er fan, I am so sick and tired of talking about pressure rate and pressures when it comes to Nick Bosa. Dude, Nick Bosa leads the league in I almost got him. Almost got him. And, you know, he finally got home this week. You know, he chases Jacoby Brissett down. It was a wild play. It was an amazing play. And Jacoby Brissett, himself over the line of scrimmage. So it ends up being a tackle, right? Not a sack or a tackle for loss. And Nick Bosa looks at it. He throws his hands up in there like, what I got to do to get a sack? And then a few plays later, he gets a strip sack or whatever. But I'm tired of hearing about pressures. I'm tired of hearing about, Nick Bosa, he caused 17 hurries. Congratulations. Jared Goff was perfect against pressure. Pressure doesn't mean anything. I need to see the results. I need to see games like this from Anderson, from Jaquan Brisker. These are massive game-changing. When you have a sack, 12 tackles, and a pick, that is like you hit the holy grail of what you're trying to accomplish in a football game.
You affected the game at every single level that you possibly
Every
could.
level.
Yep.
Especially at the safety position, in the backfield, in the middle of the field, deep, and honestly, with the way that the NFL, although the passing yards have seen a massive decrease so far this year, but at the way the NFL has exploded in offense, ban that. Only 10 players on defense, I think.
Yep, absolutely.
The way the NFL has exploded in offense in the past couple of years. Now, trust me, I like to sit down and watch a Monday Night Football game like we saw. That is purely enjoyable to me. But I also like. My team has been a defensive juggernaut for many, many years. And I like to see a player like, Anderson, like Jaquan Brisker to just, you know what, I'm going to take it over on this side of the field. And there's a few defensive linemen are cool, to watch Aiden Hutchinson have a 5-sack game. There's games where Myles Garrett just says, nah, not today. But when you see it from the safety position, when you see it from one of my favorite players to watch is Budda Baker. Because sometimes he just decides, you know what, not today. He didn't do that against the Commanders, but to see it from the safety position, to see an old school linebacker just go in there and get 17 tackles, that shit, it reminds me of Patrick Willis. It reminds me of Navarro Bowman. It reminds me of some of the greats, Ray Lewis. I just love to watch that. So shout out to those defensive performances.
It reminds you of Leighton Vander Esch on Madden. So,
Nope, I hate Leighton Vander Esch. Hey, what happened to that dude?
I don't know, man. He went into the woods. He decided to go be a lone wolf and go enjoy his life. Shout out LVE.
He got injured last year? Neck injury or something?
Yep, his persisting neck injuries.
Who'd that happen against? I can't remember. Were you in attendance for that game?
I try to block out, supposedly like brains will just block out all trauma. I don't remember any of the Niner games I've been to.
if you guys know Jacob, this man loves to talk. That's why he has a podcast. You've never seen him sit there next to you for 3 hours and not say a damn word like I have. It's crazy. Unless you go to the Celtics Kings games, then he doesn't shut the hell up. So
absolutely.
What can we do?
Looking at the other side of the ball for the offensive players of the week, I don't think that this one was as difficult to really pick up on. For me personally, two guys really stood out for me. Two. I think there's 2 guys that stood out.
Oh, wow.
I think there's an obvious one, a certain running back, and I think a wide receiver deserves a shout out because he's been balling out all season. So I'm not sure which one you're going to take.
What about the quarterback that went perfect?
Nah, I'm okay.
Do you know how hard it is to have 300 passing yards on 18 attempts?
Hey, dude, he had 292. He was a little short.
All right, just so we're clear, just so we're clear, I ranked Jared Goff third. I did have him behind a certain running back for the Baltimore Ravens and a certain wide receiver from the Texans. So
Okay,
you
so
take
we have the
whoever
same
you
two.
want.
Okay.
Yeah, you take whoever you want, and I'll take the other guy.
I'll take the less obvious ones with Nico Collins, 12 receptions, 151 yards, and a touchdown. The man's gone from who was he in the beginning of last year to Nico Collins is a pretty good one. He's a good solidified one guy. And then acquiring Stephon Diggs in the offseason, and then moving from that conversation to who's the one in Houston to now Nico Collins looks like potentially a top 7 wide receiver this year, 5 wide receiver this year, leading the league in a lot of statistical categories, or being top 3 in a lot of statistical categories. So Nico looks fantastic. Having the addition of Stephon Diggs has really allowed him to open up and not be doubled, and really have that high production that he can actually put up. So again, 12 receptions, 151 yards, and a touchdown. Looking fantastic out there for Houston.
Yeah, I mean, so much so that Tank Dell has just become a complete afterthought, and he was fantastic last year.
Yep.
Now, I don't think there's anything changed with him. I think he's still good, and having Tank Dell develop and Nico Collins develop is going to be good for the post Stephon Diggs era. But Nico Collins, what made what CJ Stroud did last year so impressive is nobody was talking about Nico Collins or Tank Dell before the season, and we're just like. And then we're like, oh, well, he has Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Well, these guys were nobodies before the start of the season. Well, it turns out that Nico Collins might just have been a dog the whole time. Like he might have just been a dude the entire time, and he just needed a legitimate quarterback to throw him the football because it's just, I mean, the Texans, they've had a couple suspicious efforts lately, but they do have a young quarterback and a young head coach and things like that are to be expected. But, oh, man. That offense is that Texans offense I put up there next to the Lions offense as to two teams I don't like. I'm not, the Ravens, you're worried about them because of Zay and they have Derrick Henry obviously and Lamar, but the firepower on those two offenses is just wild.
Absolutely. And talking about the Houston Texans, their depth at the wide receiver position too as well. I mean, obviously, you have your 3 in Diggs, Collins, and Tank Dell, but then you also have guys out there like, hey, shout out, someone give John Mechie an opportunity. And then you even have like vets on the roster as well, like Robert Woods. Like, it's still pretty depthy at that position. So if someone goes down, they still have someone else to step up right behind that, which I think is something that you brought up in the last couple of weeks. So, yeah.
Shout out to Robert Woods.
Shout out to Robert Woods.
He was a really good wide receiver before he hurt himself. So
yep, absolutely.
It's crazy how some of these guys never make it back.
Michael Gallup.
That's exactly who I'm going to compare to. Damn, what's the dude's name in Tampa Bay? They both got injured the same year. The other wide receiver, what's his name? Not Mike Evans, the other guy.
Chris Godwin.
Yeah, didn't him and Michael Gallup get injured the same year and they both got handed the contracts? Am I making that up?
Relatively around the same time. I'm not sure if it was the same year.
I think they had the same injuries, didn't they?
I think you're right.
This is why I'm supposed to write everything I'm going to say down and not shoot from the hip, because
entering final year of his contract around the same time. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was about the same time. Yeah.
It's just crazy how some of these guys make it back and some of these guys just don't. Michael Gallup has to retire. Robert Woods, he just, he had a couple of years there with the Rams. But setting Nico Collins aside, we'll talk about the other guy who might potentially have been Offensive Player of the Week. Mr. Derrick Henry should have been a Cowboy, but is a Raven. He was too expensive, just in case you were wondering, for all that cap space you guys have.
Plenty of teams didn't sign Derrick Henry. It's just Dallas is the only team to brag about not signing Derrick Henry. So just want to throw that out there. But go ahead.
Dallas is also the only team that's trotting out the corpse of Ezekiel Elliott at running back. A clear and obvious need going into the shout out to Tony Pollard. Finally had a good game.
Yeah. Well, we like our guys.
Yeah, we love our guys. So I had some concerns with Derrick Henry when he signed with the Ravens. And a couple of those concerns were the way he likes to receive the ball, the quarterback under center, and what they were going to do with Lamar and some of the play action stuff. The Titans utilized Derrick Henry much like any team does when they have a superstar at running back. They just kind of feed them. And there was a lot of times where Derrick Henry would have 16 carries for 37 yards in the first half. And the Titans were like, it doesn't matter. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one.
Sometime.
Eventually he broke for 80. Well, in this game, he broke for 80 on the first play. And my God, if he does not have the worst form when he runs that football, he runs straight up, shoulders back, faster than anybody on the field. And you're just like, he's slow. He looks so slow. How could just get him?
Yep.
He's his high, and then to go for 200 yards, obviously, after that 80, 23 carries for another 120 yards is great production out of him. He continued to be, obviously when you go for 80, your stat line's going to look great, but they came out and punched the Bills in the mouth, and that was it. I do think that's going to be the book, and I'm a huge Bills guy. We know about that. I'm a huge Josh Allen guy. I think that's going to be the book on the Bills this year. If you can get up on top of them, if you can get in front of them, they don't quite have the firepower. Now, like I said, they were making a comeback, and they decided to do this dumbass trick play that kind of blew up their game. But Derrick Henry went out there, and he was fantastic. And if he's going to be rolling like that, and then you have a change of pace like Justice Hill.
There we go.
Right. And then you have Lamar. Yeah, I know, huh? Don't yell at me. Don't yell at me. Then you have Lamar, who averaged, I think, 10 yards a carry or something silly like that. Right. It's just a very two good tight ends, I think. Although Mark Andrews has been he's been on a milk carton, which for you younger generation, they used to put missing children on milk cartons. So, and then Isaiah Likely, I think he got benched for having too big of feet after week 1 because he hasn't done anything lately. But the Ravens keep rolling. So shout out to Derrick Henry, had an amazing offensive performance, and we already mentioned Jared Goff. So I think that was
there has to be one guy who also gets a shout out, because here on the podcast, if we talk bad about someone, they play well, and if we talk good about someone, they play bad.
We're talking about
DeAndre Swift, 16 carries, 93 yards, and a touchdown, along with 7 receptions and 72 yards. So shout out him. We were just talking about him playing poor, and then he explodes this week, having a good game. Again, 16 carries, 93 yards, and a touchdown, along with 7 receptions for 72 yards. All of that on Drew's fantasy football bench. And then the other side of the ball, talking good about someone and then not playing well as special teams. So shout out to Brandon Aubrey missing his first 50-yard kick after we were just talking about that. And then I posted a YouTube short about that and a TikTok clip about that. So, that's always fun. We decided to jinx it, apparently. We're those guys.
Also, I have one other thing to talk about. And I'm just going to put a small caveat here because I have spoken a massive ton of shit about 2 things on this podcast.
Yep.
The Cowboys.
Yep.
Because I hate the Cowboys. And Justin Fields.
The man in your studio? I don't know if he's in there anymore.
No, he ain't in here no more, because thank God they lost this week. I think he had 360 total yards and 3 touchdowns.
Was it 312 in the air or something like that?
And then like another 50 or 60 on the ground. I don't have the box score in front of me because I wasn't supposed to talk about Justin Fields, but my God, and now I'm watching what the Bears are doing with Caleb, and I'm like, is Justin Fields? I got you. So my boy, he's a big Bears fan. Don't ask me why. That's a weird ass thing to be, but he also watches the podcast, so I'm going to shout him out. He sends me this stat.
Okay.
Caleb Williams becomes the first rookie quarterback selected number 1 overall to win each of his first 2 career home starts in the common draft era. And then he texts me, he says, "We are so bad that we have to make up stats to feel like we got a good thing." So the first quarterback drafted first overall to win his first 2 home starts. ESPN Congratulations. Meanwhile, Justin Fields is over here balling.
Yep.
And Russell Wilson is so sad he's just dressing up in pads to make sure he's, Now we're gonna get to our maybe a little trade talk later, and so I'm gonna put a pin in the Russell Wilson stuff for now.
Put a pin in the Justin Fields one too, because we have more on that when we look ahead of week 5.
Shout out to having a long list of quarterbacks this year who have Geno turned it around last year, but Justin Fields and my boy down there in Minnesota, I'm a big sap. You wouldn't know this if you knew me in real life, especially at work, because everybody thinks I'm kind of a jerk. But I like to watch shows like The Voice. When the chairs turn around and they start crying because people are out there accomplishing their dreams. All Sam Darnold has ever wanted to do was play quarterback at a good level. And he worked so hard for it. And he was drafted to a piss poor organization like the Jets. And then he got sent to football Siberia with the Panthers. And then he takes a backup job. And he self-admittedly could have taken a starter job somewhere. He takes a backup job in the 49ers. And I'm not claiming this at all. I'm not claiming credit for it at all. Right. The 49ers wouldn't claim credit for it at all. And now he's kicking everybody's ass. He kicked the 49ers' ass.
Yep. He's doing a little bit more than game managing.
It's just so I like to see players be successful. I mean, absolutely. Trust me, I want to see Trey Lance turn into a serviceable quarterback someday. Based off of what I'm seeing, it's not going to happen. But I want that success for everyone. I absolutely love, he's on my team, but I absolutely love the Brock Purdy thing. The 7th rounder?
Yeah.
Which
the last pick, it's not supposed to happen.
It's funny because if you go back a year prior, he was ranked as a first-round pick. He just didn't come out. And then Iowa wasn't as good. I like to see guys succeed. As much as I talk shit on this podcast, if Justin Fields makes me eat a big fat-ass bowl of crow because the Steelers continue to be good, I'll just be so happy for that dude. Especially because then I can laugh at the Bears because it's like, well, you had that guy and what happened? You couldn't get anything out of him. And now he's going for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Absolutely. Continue on with our awards for the week. Looking at the rookie performances, top 3 rookie performances of week 4. I'll go ahead and kick it off because this guy was my guy throughout the draft process. And
get out of here.
Where do you think I'm going?
How can you not mention Jaden Daniels first? What are we doing?
Because this guy was my guy throughout the entire draft process, and I have to bring up Braden Fisk looking fantastic with 4 tackles, a sack, a tackle for a loss, and a quarterback hit in this previous week. Again, a guy that I absolutely love through the draft process. I absolutely pushed in the draft process, and he's looked really, really good up to this point. And again, notching his first NFL sack. And looking fantastic throughout these past 4 weeks. You love to see it, at least maybe not you, but I love to see it just because Fisk was my guy. Well, just he plays for the Rams, so there's that.
Well, we spent so much time this offseason, more than we ever have, dissecting all this, and not even just on the podcast, just in person. And these players that I've, like looking at a player like Andrew Phillips for the Giants at corner, who's been fantastic, and thinking, okay, he's going to be, the 49ers could get him in the second, and just taking mock drafts out to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round this year and knowing what the hell I was talking about with those players. It's just really exciting to see players like Fisk and following college football like I do. I know I watch more college football than you do, and then you scout it later, right? But watching Fisk be a dominant player all year and then wondering how it's the same thing I'm watching now. Michigan has a corner, and I'm just like, this dude looks like, I don't know what the NFL is going to do with Travis Hunter, wide receiver corner. I don't know which way they're going to go with that. But this dude looks like a lockdown corner. How's it going to translate, right? Looking at Shador, and I'm just like, how's that going to translate? Because he's at Colorado. Colorado's not great, but his processing is top-notch. Shador sees everything on the field, right? Yep. He doesn't have the talent around him to succeed at the highest level, but it is what it is. So I'd like to see players like Fisk, and I'm glad that you went there because outside of Jaden Daniels, who could have made our offensive player of the week list, but I want to shout him out on the rookie list. I got 2 guys that we haven't mentioned yet. And so I will go ahead and mention a certain defensive lineman that came from Texas, do you know what I'm going to say?
I don't think so.
He destroyed Miami the other day. No, you're not there. We're on the rookie defensive lineman, Mr. Tavondre Sweat. You don't remember Mr. Sweat?
You're right.
This
Tavondre's been like one of the highest ranked PFF interior defensive linemen all year. He's been nuts.
Now, I'm a PFF guy, but there's been a couple times where I'm looking at PFF. Fred Warner's the highest ranked linebacker in the league or defensive player in the league. Okay, that makes sense. He's killing it. Yep. Sometimes there's people up there on that list, and I'm just like, what the hell? That ain't right. And then other times I know a player's balling out, and I go look at his PFF grade, and it sucks. I'm like, I'm going to flush that. That doesn't make sense. Sweat hasn't
with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Sweat hasn't jumped out too much to me the first couple of weeks of the season, but this week, that man, I'm watching the game. Don't ask me why I'm watching Miami. It's a complete waste of my time, right? But they stuck him on a primetime game, so I got to watch. I got 2 screens up.
Yep.
It just felt like every play. And perfect example, going back to earlier when I was talking about Nick Bosa. Well, he almost got the sack. Oh, he got the pressure. He almost got the sack. Now, Sweat was just like, you know what? I'm going to take over this game. I'm going to dominate it. And he was one of those players where when we were talking pre-draft and all that stuff, I had him ranked a lot higher than a lot of mock drafts. I think I mocked him at one point in the first round.
We ended up mocking him in the third because of how far he was dropping. We were both on the same page about Sweat, but we ended up having to mock him in the third because of what we were hearing.
Yeah. And it just
didn't feel right.
It's good to see him show out. Shout out to Fist for showing out. I like that.
Absolutely.
Who else you got?
I also have a Mr. Brian Thomas Jr., 6 receptions, 86 yards, and a touchdown. Another one of those guys who we went extensive processing through pre-draft process. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to get with these guys who are very, very fast, but a guy who's that big and just barely slower, and slower is very, subjective word here, slower than Xavier Worthy, who got all the hype, but what was he, 40 pounds heavier than Xavier Worthy and like 2/10 of a second slower. So that's the type of guy that Brian Thomas is. And you get kind of like worried about what type of guy are you getting, a Jalen Hyatt type of guy who's not really going to do anything in the league, especially for the Giants, or are you going to show out and do what you're doing this year? Again, 6 receptions, 86 yards and a touchdown. Jacksonville might be 0-4, but at least they have some sort of wide receiver in the making over there. Who's your next one?
I had to go a little homerish, and I apologize.
Okay.
But Dominic Pooney is the 14th highest ranked guard PFF in the league. And this is where the eye test supports the PFF grade. He's been absolutely fantastic as a rookie guard. And the reason why I'm picking him is because you and me battled all offseason on the Rams and them spending all this money on these guards. And now their offensive line is absolute shambles. And the 49ers just picked this dude up in round 3, slotted him in at right guard, and now he's one of the best guards in the league so far. And the 49ers offensive line is not great. Normally, the rising tide raises all boats, right? So when the offensive line is really good, it's really easy to look really good. 49ers offensive line is not good. Matter of fact, coming into this week, they had the worst center in the league rated. And the guy right next to him is one of the best in the league rated. So I just shout out to him. I think that I'm going to keep it a trend mentioning an offensive lineman every week. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of injuries, so it's taken a little bit out of my thing here, but I snuck in. Speaking of which, I mean, you guys have an offensive rookie on the offensive line that's been absolutely fantastic this year also. And I'm not talking about your first round pick, by the way.
And believe me, we will talk about that first round pick later when we do our rookie check-in for our first month. Sweet. So we have 2 there, and then we're both kind of just mentioning Jaden Daniels as well, right? I mean, you have to 26 of 30, 233, a touchdown, 8 carries and 47 yards, and absolutely decimating the Arizona Cardinals. Kind of feels like you have to mention Jaden Daniels, who's not only looking like one of the best rookies if not the best rookie in the draft, but also looking like a top 10 quarterback already, very comfortably.
Going back to Brian Thomas, I have him in that other segment we're doing for rookies later, so I probably won't talk about him much. But the majority of his catches this week, do you know who they came against?
Who?
Mr. Kamari Lassiter, which is which is funny because
we shouted him out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, bro. I'm glad that some of our previous takes aren't recorded like this one is, because stuff that we talk about this year is going to come up in year 3 and year 4. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have any of my massive Christian Watson love on tape, and he's just he's injured now. But shout out to Brian Thomas Jr.
Absolutely. So there we go. There's our rookie performances of week 4. But again, not everyone can be winners. Someone has to be a loser around here, and that has to go into the doghouse. Drew, who is your there we go. Who is going in your doghouse for week 4? Because I have a pretty unique one, a guy who's not gonna ever probably be in the doghouse past this point. But I definitely want to put him in this week because you got to pick up the opportunity when it presents itself. So you go ahead and start it out, and then I'll finish it for you.
Are you putting your kicker in the doghouse?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay, good.
No,
Hey,
no.
I watched back this segment last week just to see how it went, and it's really funny because the AI kicks out your bark.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, so you go, oh, and I'm like, whoa, that's we got to get the sound back in there because that looks awful. Okay, my doghouse. So we did a segment. I know all of you guys that are watching this have watched every minute of our podcast, but we did a segment leading up to the season because we were bored as hell, where we did like 20 random ass things that might happen this year. And one of my crazy predictions was that the Tennessee Titans and Will Levis were going to be really fun to watch. Now, as long as you're not a Titans fan, everything that Will Levis has done on the football field this season has been hysterical to watch.
Yep.
Now, it's all been absolutely terrible. So for that, Will Levis is going in my doghouse. Now, he has company. I haven't let Brandon Ayuk out yet. Lamar got out. Lamar's cool. He's doing his thing. Brandon Ayuk's ass is still in there because, you know, he had one catch for 30 yards that Kyle Shanahan got him wide ass open on. And then, you know, Brock Purdy, who eventually we're going to talk about, by the way, because he's putting all the doubters got to shut the hell up. You know, the 49ers are like last in yak this year, and Brock Purdy second in passing yards. Last in yak, second in passing yards. He tosses up this beautiful ball to Juwan Jennings, right? Get it, go. He passes this beautiful go route to Deebo Samuel. Get it, go. He passes into triple coverage to George Kittle. George Kittle goes and gets it done. He finally puts one up for Brandon Ayuk, and guess what happens? It gets picked off. God, Brandon, your ass sucks. I'm still out on you. You're still in the doghouse, but now you got company with Will Levis. Maybe we should ship you off to Tennessee. Or maybe we should ship you to the Raiders for Devontae, because Devontae wants out. So
yeah, I saw that. I saw an article about that one. That was pretty interesting to look at. For me personally, again, my doghouse of the week is a guy that I got to take the opportunity because he's a guy that's not going to end up in the doghouse. I don't know if he's ever ended up in the doghouse, but I have to mention a quarterback that is top 3 quarterback of all time at this point. Mr. Patrick Mahomes deserves to be in the doghouse for throwing a pick, and then on said pick goes for
Rashee Rice.
You tear your leading wide receiver's ACL at that point. How do you throw a pick, throw your body into your number 1 wide receiver who's been absolutely balling, and tear his ACL? You deserve to go in the doghouse for that alone. Throwing a pick and then tearing the ACL on a 5-second window of opportunity. So Patrick Mahomes, you go in the doghouse for that one.
He did it on purpose.
You think he did it on purpose?
Yeah, because he got after you know the news hasn't come out yet, but once it does, Patrick Mahomes is going to walk in, he's going to grab Andy Reid, and they're going to go in and they're going to walk into the GM's office and they're going to say, "Yo, there's a certain team out there and their season is completely shot to shit now. They have playoff aspirations. They're not going anywhere with the Skylar something or Snoop Dogg quarterback. So call the Dolphins and get my boy Tyreek Hill back.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And let's reunite this and get Tyreek Hill back to the Chiefs so the 49ers can kick that ass in the Super Bowl." That's what I'm super hoping for. But real talk, expect the Chiefs to be super aggressive. This is Hollywood Brown on the IR now. Yep. This is Rashee Rice on the IR who was balling out. And Xavier Worthy is a super good weapon, but he is a rookie, and we have seen the press issues. So with him being the primary focus on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah, bro. Taylor Swift sucked the life out of him.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Every time I text you one of my really good puns, you say save it for the podcast. So
that's true. I do. That's on me. I should have expected there's something.
And we're obviously going to talk about trades later, so I won't say anything else about that. But Patrick Mahomes in the doghouse, that's wild.
Yeah. Hey, you got to take the opportunity when it pops up.
Obviously, with him in the doghouse, they lost that game, right?
No, they didn't. I don't know how they end up
Damn.
keep winning, but I guess
All
we'll
I
talk
do
about
is
it.
win.
I guess we'll talk about a little bit more in this next segment. Drew, always with the Dwayne Wade lob. I'm going to go ahead and throw it down with the top 10 power rankings. After our first 4 weeks of the season, we are a month in officially, so quarter of the way through. Basically, looking at our top 10, starting it out, I had a hard time with my 10, 11, 12, 13 spot because every single one of my teams at the 10, 11, 13, 10, 11, 12, 13 lost. So the people who just missed a cut from me is the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Seattle Seahawks, all just missing the cut, all taking losses. And my number 10 also taking a loss, but doing it against a team that is ranked very, very, very high in the power rankings, very deservedly so. And that is the Green Bay Packers, still sticking in the top 10. They were in the top 10 last week, just barely hanging on. And that's just because all those 4 teams, including them, did end up losing. So they end up staying in there, putting up a good performance, trying to come back against those Minnesota Vikings, a division opponent. So not sure how much stock you really put into that, but they're ranked really, really high. They put up a good fight there at the end. I barely kept them in there for that.
Yeah, my 11 through 14 are kind of the same. We got the Steelers, we got the Seahawks, we got the Saints. We do have the Packers there. I did not put them in the top 10. You're winning with your backup quarterback, and then you get your starter back who you just handed this big contract to, and then you lose. It's just kind of deflating. Now, I will tell you, this right here, these are my podcast notes.
Inside scoop.
Yeah, I got my top 10 on this, but what you can't see is the freaking 15 pages that I threw away to get here, which is super exciting to have that much thought go into a top 10 power ranking.
Absolutely.
Most of the reason is because I hate my team right now. But I do have to say the team that I ranked in at number 10, they are a young emerging team. I don't think anyone expected them to be where they're at right now. But all of a sudden, entering into week 5, they are fully in command of not only their season, but their division. Yep. And that would be the young Jaden Daniels-led Washington Commanders. They're in the top 10 for 2 reasons. They're number 1 in their division. I believe in their head coach. I believe in their quarterback, and I'm going to continue to pound the table for Jaden Daniels because Jacob did not like him in the pre-draft process. And I told you they have a legitimate front office now. Yep. My guy, Adam Peters, let me tell you about Adam Peters' background. The Bill Belichick Patriots, the John Elway Broncos, the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch 49ers, and now he's there in Washington with a new ownership group. And like I said, at number 10, fully in command of their season, the Commanders.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you, except I have them 1 spot higher at the number 9 spot. For all the reasons that you said, absolutely. Wasn't a fan of Jaden Daniels coming into the pre-draft process. All that, we've talked about this multiple times now, a couple weeks in a row. Everything kind of gets thrown out of the window as soon as we start playing the actual games and you're set into a certain system. Forget the system. Jaden Daniels is the system. You don't just I don't want to harp on it too much because he's going to be in the later segment, and he's already made me eat crow, and so I'm put a very thorough list together of all the things that he's done up to this point. So I want to save that for the rookie check-in, but just know he's playing fantastic. And if you're only listening to just the power ranking segment, first of all, listen to our full-length podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that stuff, or YouTube. Or go check out the clip of the rookie check-in up to this point. So again, Jaden Daniels, absolutely agree with you up to this point. 4 weeks in, looking incredible. Sitting at my number 9 spot. Who's in your number 9?
So I guess this is where we just slightly disagree. I'm guessing that the rest of the way, most of our stuff is going to be pretty similar.
Very close,
but at number 9, and I'll tell you, I rank these guys in and out. They've won in the playoffs recently, so that's why I have them in front of the Commanders, even though the Commanders have a better record than them, and they're in the same division. At number 9, I do still have the Philadelphia Eagles. The team is just – they're officially, for me, though, on suspicious alert. They are red flagged all over the place.
Should be.
I think this thing with Sirianni is going bad. Like, I think it's going bad. And once again, we got an offensive coordinator there who is not making sense of anything. And this team it has so much talent. You have Saquon, you have 2-star wide receivers, you have a really good tight end.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense to me why they look like they're hungover. You know, like when you expect something out of someone and they get really drunk the night before, then they come out and play. That's what the Philadelphia Eagles look like right now.
Yep.
And I wanted to drop them out of the top 10, but the Packers lose with their starting quarterback. The Seahawks lose. The Steelers lose. It was just like, well, I'm not going to drop a team out that's been in the top 10 all year for somebody that wasn't quite that impressive. And frankly, the only other team that I considered was Dallas, but they looked terrible. But it was also Thursday night, and every team looks terrible on Thursday night. So I thought about putting them back in because they did get the W, and it's a Thursday night game, and it really means nothing. But it's funny I probably could have switched these teams. I could have put the command, but you can't debut any higher than 10, I don't think. Like, it's your first time in the top 10, you can't be any higher than 10. So That's where I'm at.
Sitting at my number 8 spot is a team that has reemerged back inside of the top 10, and a team that recently has just won 2 games in a row against 2 playoff aspiration hopeful teams, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. We talked about the Ravens a little bit in the Offensive Player of the Week with Lamar and Derrick Henry and how well they've played, and I didn't really give them a whole lot of credit against Dallas because I brought it up last week. I'm a pretty pessimistic Dallas fan, but doing against the Buffalo Bills, who still, spoiler alert, ranks very, very, very high in this top 10 for both of us, you deserve to be put back inside that top 10. You're sitting at that 8th spot. You're only ahead of a team, for me, that's debuting in the top 10 for the first time in the Commanders, and a team that lost this past week, put up a good fight, but lost. So their default put at that number 8 spot. So, I'm with you. I think it was a lot of fun to try to put together that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 spot. But these teams 7 through 1 for me, I think are pretty solidified, and I really like all of their chances going forward. Who's your number 8?
I had the Buccaneers at number 8.
Okay.
They slipped up, and now they're back. And are you still there?
I am.
Okay, you disappeared for a second. I thought you hated my take, so you're like, nope, I'm done.
I only have the Bucs one spot higher. We're right there basically.
and so you got the Buccaneers at 7. I got the Ravens at 7. So we could put a bow on that because we're right there on both those teams.
Absolutely.
The Ravens lose to the Kansas City Chiefs by an inch, and then they blow a 10-point. They blow a 10-point lead to the Raiders in the fourth quarter, which will end up being the Raiders Super Bowl.
Yep.
All the Raiders fans at work, by the way, are on suicide watch because of this Devontae Adams news. So they had their Super Bowl when they beat the Ravens, and that's about it. So yeah, the Buccaneers. The reason why I didn't put them a little bit higher is just because we know that there's going to be a couple times this year where Baker Mayfield's going to forget that he's this version of Baker Mayfield, and he's going to be Cleveland Browns Baker Mayfield for a game, and it's going to cost him because ultimately the talent on that team, while it's good, is not going to be able to overcome his bad decision making every 5 or 6 weeks. But the Buccaneers are going to be that team in the playoffs where everybody's like, shit, I don't want to play them. That was the Lions and the Packers last year. Obviously, they both those teams should have beat the 49ers in their games. And I think just ultimately our experience kind of won those games for us. But the Buccaneers are shaping up to be that team that nobody wants to play. Baker Mayfield's just going to huck it, bro. Mike Evans is down there. Chris Godwin's down there. He's down there. Just
good.
He's down there somewhere.
Well, that's Levante David still doing his thing on defense. And they look good. At the end of the day,
only, if Bucky Irving, if his injury issues are going to be a long term, that's going to suck because Rashawn White is not good at running the football. But
one of the most inefficient running backs this year and last year, back-to-back years. He's like stretch of 10 games in a row. He's like the most inefficient running back. Not even close.
Which is funny because they keep getting. He's a threat in the passing game. He's really good in the passing game. But you gotta. I guess you got to continue to give him the carries so you don't know what's coming back there. But at some point, you just got to realize, we got to figure this out because we cannot be one dimensional come playoff time.
No, I'm absolutely there with you. So we already covered our number 8 and our number 7 spot. At my number 6 spot, which I believe this is the exact same spot that I have them last week, it might actually be one spot higher for actually capturing a win, regardless of who it was against, is your San Francisco 49ers at that 6th spot. Are you there at the same place, or did you move them up more? Okay, so perfect.
Yeah, so
exact same place.
Some stuff came out about Christian McCaffrey this week, and the
Both
49ers
legs.
The 49ers are talking about ramping him back up, and then the national beat reporters are talking about he's out to like week 12. So I don't know which way this is going to go.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of concerns with the fact that we do not have a backup running back on the roster at the moment. Garendo, we drafted as a rookie. He had every carry he's gotten has gone for a loss. Every carry he's gotten has been a negative play. And then he took a kickoff this week and he just ran up his own player's back and decided to fumble. It was like the Mark Sanchez butt fumble, right? So
We'll trade for Miles Sanders if you want.
Kyle Shanahan is going to do this thing where he's just going to hand Jordan Mason. Shout out to Jordan Mason. He's the number 2 running back in the league right now, right?
Yep.
He's just going to hand him 24 carries a game. And he's going to break down by week 7 or week 8. And we don't have a backup on the roster. So I'm super nervous about that. The defense finally bounced back, but they're absolutely awful on third down conversions. They can't get off the field, and they bounced back against the Patriots. So does it really mean anything? They got the Cardinals this week, who notoriously give them problems. The week after that, they got the Seahawks, who are on fire. And then after that, they got to go Chiefs, Cowboys. So that's not great at all.
Guaranteed one in one of them.
Well, I hope we lose to the Chiefs because we're not beating the Chiefs twice this season, I don't think. So let's lose to the Chiefs so we can beat them in the Super Bowl if we have to. But, the fact remains, Brock Purdy is on a MVP pace once again.
The MVP race so far has been a lot of fun, with Brock solidifying himself right there, along with a bunch of other quarterbacks who probably shouldn't be there, but they are.
Yeah, Brock's processing is just so good. And I've almost come to the point where I've accepted the fact that he's really good. Some of these plays that he's making, it's mind-boggling to see where he throws the ball in relation to where the receiver is at the time, and then just to watch the play come together. It's just I hate doing this comparison thing. People are going to clip this and tell me I'm an idiot, but it's very Peyton Manning-ish. Peyton Manning had a terrible arm toward the end of his career, but he just knew where the player was going to be. And it's just really fun after watching years of hospital balls from Jimmy to watch a really good quarterback play. Before Jimmy, we had Colin Kaepernick throwing 109-mile-an-hour fastballs to guys that were 3 yards away from him. It's just it's relaxing to watch good quarterback play. But, if they come out and beat the Cardinals, if they come back out and beat these next 4 games, if they go 3-1, they'll probably be top 4 again for me. But right now I'm a little, the Christian McCaffrey news is not great. And, but luckily we're getting our rookie back who probably should have died, but didn't, when he was shot in the chest. And the next day he was at practice. So Pearsall should be coming back here soon. So hopefully we can start talking about him on the rookie roundup. Beautiful. Fingers crossed.
Looking at the number 5 spot, and our 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 might be the exact same. So looking at number 5 spot, I have the Detroit Lions. Same spot? No, you moved them. Okay, so I'm guessing we have 4 and 5 spot. I'm guessing. My 5 is the Lions. My 4 is the Houston Texans. No? Move the Vikings down 1 spot?
No, I dropped the Bills, bro.
Oh, wow. Okay, you did.
Yep, because the book was put out on them. The Ravens put the book out on them. When Josh Allen, when they can run the ball with James Cook, when he can run the ball, when they can control the pace, when they can get out ahead of teams, it's going to be really hard to beat this team because it's going to be really hard to get them off the field.
I said the Bills because I didn't know if you were actually going to drop them. I know your love.
Yeah, I dropped them to 5 just because now there's a clear and obvious way to beat this team. If you can get out in front of them, the offense just does not have the firepower yet. No, maybe they trade for Devontae and that changes, but I dropped them because the book is out. And frankly, I was super impressed by the Lions, and the Texans bounced back really well. So I got the Bills at 5.
Okay. Bills are a couple spots higher for me, but Detroit Lions are sitting at my number 5 spot. They went out, they beat the Seattle Seahawks. How you feel about that kind of depends on your view of the Seattle Seahawks. But again, talking about with the game of the week, seeing the offense come to life and actually have a good performance from a handful of the guys we've been waiting for to really all come together. Jared Goff being perfect. Jameson Williams really looking great this season. Amon-Ra St. Brown doing his thing. And then the two-headed monster at the running back position. With Frank Ragnow being out on their offensive line, still being able to churn and chug and still being able to do everything that they can do at this point. Looks fantastic. So I just like the guys in front of them. At this point, we talk about this every single week. It comes to a point where you just like the teams in front of them. And for me, that just kind of situates the Lions at that number 5 spot, which I still enjoy quite a bit. Who's your, so you said your Buffalo Bills are the number 5 spot. I have them a couple spots higher. And then you already kind of broke that down. So who's your 4?
The Houston Texans.
Okay, so we both have the Texans at that 4 spot.
Yep. Nothing changes. I'm a big believer. I'm a little nervous that maybe their inexperience and, stuff. And, come to find out, the Vikings defense might just be legit. Brian Flores might just be getting himself a head coaching job. So I'm not going to hold what happened against the Texans against the Vikings, just like I don't really hold it against the 49ers. I'm more pissed at the 49ers for losing that game to the Rams, which they should not have won because they were kicking their ass. But, the Ravens lose to the Raiders. Things are weird in the first month of the season. But, yeah, the Houston Texans are everything we thought they were. Obviously, you were a little higher on them than I was to begin the season just because I'm like, what's the likelihood that C.J. Stroud can do this back-to-back? So far, he's doing it. So I got them firmly implanted in number 4. Honestly, my top 5 here, it's going to be really hard to see any of them fall. Now, if the Bills lose again next week, maybe. But,
yeah.
We were talking about next week what it was going to take for the Bills to supplant the Chiefs. We talked about that last week, and then the Bills came out and laid a stinker, and the Chiefs took home a dub. So I got the Texans at 4.
I have the Buffalo Bills at that 3 spot. They just dropped 1 spot for me. Still high octane, still high power. Josh Allen is still looking like he is the potential front runner for MVP. Look up the odds on that one, but I'm sure he's quite high on that one. Talking about quarterbacks that are in the mix for MVP, Brock, Josh Allen, fucking throw Sam Darnold in there for all I care at this point. But Buffalo Bills at that 3 spot. Losing to the Baltimore Ravens is definitely a huge hit and definitely doesn't look great for them. It looks like they got decimated, especially on paper. Watching the game, sometimes it looks a little bit different, but then now you have your third down pass rush specialist being out for the next handful of games, and Von Miller is going to hurt them a little bit, and not really a lot of depth behind them on that defensive side of the ball. Already not the most sturdy defense on the planet, with a couple of guys who are starting who might not be starting on other teams, Taylor Rapp, DeMar Hamlin, and then their corners that they have on the outside of Teron Johnson, who I really like in the nickel spot. Outside of that, a couple of their corner spots in their secondary is a little bit shaky, and they could definitely be looked at with a little bit of a side eye, even with the performance that DeMar Hamlin has been putting up this season as a safety. At the number 3 spot for you,
Detroit Lions.
Okay, it's a big bump up, right, for you?
Yeah, I watched every snap of that game, and it just put a fear in me a little bit, and I think that kind of stuck with me. Now they like I said, I did a couple iterations of this, and they were kind of bouncing all over the place. There's a team that's holding into the top 6 in the 49ers that I think it's just the respect that people are giving them right now, even though they're not really playing at that high of a level. But there's 2 things that you can kind of go off of that. The 49ers aren't playing at a high level, and they're still 2-2. Maybe that's why we should have them higher. The Lions are playing out of their mind. Can they continue it? Well, until they don't, this is a weekly power ranking system. So right now, there are 3 teams that I would not want to face, and in order, that's how I rank them. The Bills, I think the 49ers kind of tailor-made to beat that team with the way Fred Warner's playing right now, to take away everything happening in the middle of the field and the way he can run around.
Yeah.
And the Texans are just, they got to show me a little bit more. I haven't forgotten what happened in their playoff game last year. So.
Absolutely. And then our 2 and our 1 are the exact same then at that point, which feels like we've
unless you put the Chiefs at 2.
I did not, and we're still on that. Unless the Chiefs are going to lose a ball game, probably not going to drop them outside of that. Minnesota Vikings at the number 2 spot, and the Kansas City Chiefs at the number 1 spot, unless you switched it for whatever reason. The Vikings look absolutely legit with the weapons. Brian Flores led defense and the blitz schemes they're coming from that guy, absolutely nuts. Brock Purdy's giving them their props after that game, obviously, but the Green Bay Packers with a division game ended up giving them a little bit of trouble there at that tail end. Still stuck around, still held out. Sam Darnold playing at a potential MVP level, being an MVP candidate. I believe he's still top 5 for those odds there. Aaron Jones at the running back position after not having a running back last year, and Alexander Madison and him looking like absolute shit. The offensive line looks good. You have multiple weapons and emerging weapons like guys like Jalen Naylor on the wide receiver position, obviously along with Jay Jettis, and you still have Jordan Addison as well. And you're still going to get back TJ Hawkinson this season. So the Minnesota Vikings look super legit on both sides of the ball, and I'm excited to continue to see how they progress and how they continue, because personally, and I feel like this for a lot of people, did not see them at this point at the season at all. And then looking forward, the JJ McCarthy discussion is definitely going to be interesting heading down the line. So, but same thing for you, Minnesota Vikings at 2 and the Chiefs at 1. Looks like we just lost Drew a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and continue it with the Kansas City Chiefs at that number 1 spot. Totally fine. Totally okay. So Kansas City Chiefs, number 1 spot. I've already said it, that we are not going to be dropping the Patrick Mahomes led Kansas City Chiefs out of our number 1 spot until they win, or until they lose. They're 4-0. They're not losing a ball game yet. Is it ugly the way that they are winning? Absolutely. But beating the LA Chargers 17-10 doesn't matter. They are still at the number 1 spot. And Drew has decided to join the Tea Party once again. Drew, you want to go?
So if Riverside kicks me out because I have no internet, but I'm watching you on YouTube and it's still working, and I'm like, all right, cool. Well, at least I won't miss anything because I'm still watching it.
Go ahead. You're good.
Yeah. I mean, the Chiefs haven't lost. So, and do I think they're going to lose here soon? Probably. That offense is going to be in a little bit of shambles, but the Vikings have a game against the Jets that's kind of funky. The Lions are playing. Who's Detroit playing? Come on, Drew. Do they got a bye week?
They're on bye week.
I hate bye weeks. Bye weeks should be illegal. So Detroit can't move up, and Houston is playing. Well, Houston's playing Buffalo. That's a massive game. Listen,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, if the Vikings come out and kind of look suspicious against the Jets, and the Chiefs come out and lose, and the Texans come out and smash Buffalo's face in, or Buffalo comes out and smashes the Texans' face in, maybe we could see a little movement right there at the top.
Yep,
we shall see.
This week 5, honestly, is a pretty good lineup. I think you have big implications for the AFC North with Cowboys versus Steelers on Sunday Night Football. But you also obviously have the Vikings and the Jets, or wrong division. I was just talking about the lineup. Vikings and Jets in London, I think, is a very interesting game. I don't talk about that one way later. But you have the Ravens versus the Bengals, which have huge implications. Drew reacting to what I just said. The Ravens versus the Bengals having huge implications for that AFC North as well. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this is going to kind of shake out, especially and then continuing looking at the lineup, Bills Texans, probably the marquee matchup, but interdivision rivalry with the Cardinals and the 49ers as well. So it all looks like fun for week 5.
I think that Minnesota Vikings defense at 6:30 a.m. in London is going to make Aaron Rodgers look washed. Just so you know.
That's okay.
Maybe you're going the other way with that, but that's going to be my bold prediction. We finally got a good Thursday night football game too.
Oh yeah, look at that. The Bucks and the Falcons, another interdivision. I mean, if Falcons win that game, they're sitting there tied at 3-2.
Yeah, we got Kirk Cousins and fuck it Mayfield.
Yeah, fucking Mayfield. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, so little Buffalo Wild Wings action Sunday night in Folsom to watch the Pittsburgh Cowboys game. What's up with that?
We could do that. Absolutely.
What's
I'm
up
down
with
for
that?
that. So, moving off of our power rankings and looking at the other headlines for week 4, Drew, the first thing I want to go ahead and talk about for this week is obviously massive, just with everything coming out with depending on who's requesting for trades and whatnot. But my original question was, who is in the trade market team wise, and who should they target? So I don't know if you want to go ahead and start this off. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams looking. It's technically one segment is 2 teams together, and that has to do with a little bit of the news today with Davante Adams. But a handful of teams. I'm not sure who you have in the market, but if you want to go ahead and kick us off, you can.
Well, good thing I didn't read the memo because I didn't go with teams. I picked players that might be on the move.
I went players first, and then I swapped it. Like I wrote it out as teams.
I think the number one player that's probably so I'll go players, you go teams. That'll be good. That'll give us depth to this. Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick's got to be on the move. I don't think at this point there's any way that you can bring him back in and rekindle this relationship that was fractured before it started.
Absolutely.
And pass rushers, Randy Gregory, Chase Young, these Von Miller back in the day. There's these pass rushers are always these splash trade chips, and it's hard to say what kind of shape he's in, but any team, Micah Parsons out for a couple of weeks, D-Law on the IR, things like that. Now we know the Cowboys won't do it because Jared Jones never does anything like that, but that type of team, like you just mentioned, the Bills have nothing behind Von Miller, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Do they pick up the phone and see, can you get Hassan Reddick for a 7th round pick at this point?
I think there's a certain wide receiver that would love to be reunited with his old quarterback in Davante Adams, and maybe there is a need in Vegas for a little bit of pass rush help because they are ranked bottom 10 in the league right now in pass rush.
Tyree Wilson.
Tyree Wilson. There we go. Maybe we're looking at a little bit of a Hassan Reddick, Davante Adams swap plus a pick on the Hassan Reddick side. So I know that the look is right now about a 2nd round pick is what they're asking for Davante, but Hassan in a 3rd because Hassan's just kind of a throw in because what the fuck is he doing anyways at this point? But again, I think this benefits both sides. Davante would love, I think, to go out there and play with Aaron Rodgers once again, and then Hassan Reddick obviously wants to be out of New York and he wants to just play for money. He wants to at least make money. So and Vegas has the capabilities to actually pay him. They have the cap space, $27 million in cap. There was a couple teams that had kicked around for Hassan Reddick, but a couple of those teams just did not have the cap space for him because he's going to want to get paid before he even plays it down for whatever team that he goes to. So with Vegas having the capacity, Davante wanting out, I think this could be a potential good trade for both sides.
You know who has Hassan Reddick written all over them?
Philadelphia Eagles? Oh, wait. No, he was already there. Go ahead. Sorry.
They can't trade for him for 2 years, just so you know.
Right.
My team, the 49ers, that's got Hassan Reddick written all over them. They've made a bunch of trades at the deadline the past couple of years to bring in pass rushers. They got the most cap space in the NFL, 2nd most cap space in the NFL. Yeah. And obviously that is trying to be rolled over for Brock Purdy, but the Super Bowl window is now, not 3 years from now. So I do think Hassan Reddick's definitely going to be moved. That was a nice tie-in with the Davante Adams. Number 3 on my list was the wide receiver need in Kansas City. Obviously,
yeah, I'm right there with you.
We talked about Tyreek Hill earlier, but I think based off of what's going on in Cleveland, I think the Chiefs have to pick up the phone and see if they can get Amari Cooper out of there. And I don't know about you, but Amari Cooper's route running and Patrick Mahomes throwing the football, that does not excite me in the least.
The only caveat I have Amari going somewhere, and it's not Kansas City. The only problem I had with Amari going to Kansas City is the Kansas City wide receivers led the league in drops last year, and I don't think they want that same thing to happen when Amari Cooper is leading the entire NFL with 6 drops for this season already over 4 games. He's looked a little bit of lackluster as late. Obviously, I still believe in Amari and what he could do. He played for the Cowboys. I see what he can do up close and personal.
Raiders.
So I think Amari might go somewhere else. I just don't know if it's Kansas City just because of the drop problem so far this season. I don't know if they want another wide receiver that might potentially have those issues kind of screaming in their face. I do have a different guy who runs decent routes.
Me too. I have a 3rd for the Chiefs. Who do you got?
I have a certain wide receiver who plays in the slot for a team that's 0-4 in Christian Kirk.
Oh,
Christian
okay.
Kirk potentially being on the move. Brian Thomas looks really good, has big potential, sky high ceiling, and the team is 0-4. You might want to move some pieces around, especially get some draft capital back. And I think this guy could be the one to move it for Kansas City. I think this could look really good for them.
What do you think about them calling up Tennessee and liberating DeAndre Hopkins?
I tossed that one around a little bit because DeAndre's played better as of late. And that kind of feels very Kansas City-ish. And the only other place I see DeAndre go and be like Philly, because for some reason Philly just like picks up a bunch of like washed players, a la Julio Jones. But
Oh
maybe
yeah, that was awful.
Right? Almost as bad as him going to Tennessee. We can move on from that. I'm glad we didn't have the podcast then. But I could see it. I'm not sure if I like it. I might put that third on the list for me. I like Kirk there, and then I would like Cooper, and then Hopkins would be right below that. Obviously, Hill would probably be top of the list, but in terms of outside of that.
Did you see him blowing up on the sidelines last night? Tyreek?
No, I didn't.
Clearly, I watched way too much of that game while you were focused on the exciting game.
Right.
I guess another tie-in, we'll see if either of your teams tie into this. I got two quarterbacks that might potentially be on the move. Obviously, we've talked about Bryce Young already, but also Mr. Russell Wilson down there in Pittsburgh, because at this point, I would think that Justin Fields has bought you a lot of equity in your 3-1 start, especially the way he's playing. And you're not benching him at any point unless he falls off a cliff. He would have to get hurt. And I'm just not sure what Russell Wilson brings you at this point. Why do we think he could stay healthy? Because he just hasn't been able to. So
absolutely. I agree with that. I didn't know if you were going to cover in the quarterback, so I actually went all different skill positions. I have one offensive side of the ball guy. I have Amari Cooper, and then I have a safety in a corner on my list as well. So
you have a safety?
I do have a safety.
I wonder if we have the same safety.
I have a star safety.
I have a superstar safety who wants to get paid this offseason.
I also have a superstar safety who wants to get paid this offseason.
Does he play in Arizona?
He does play in Arizona.
Yeah, Buda Baker. All right. Good.
Yep.
That's good. That's good. We don't discuss our shit before the podcast, just so everybody knows. We don't. It's
a rarity that we do.
Yeah.
If only on the last year of his contract.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely going to want to get moved, especially because Kazir White, James Conner, these guys are also up for contract as well. I know you just drafted Trey Benson, but James Conner is clearly a very integral part of this team, and he's probably going to stick around for a little bit longer, and Kazir is going to get paid as well. So safety position is definitely expendable. We saw that with the Broncos letting go of their safety. The Bengals let their guy walk last year, and Jesse Bates. So these guys are clearly not going to be integral parts of a lot of teams. And for me personally, where I have him going is a team that needs secondary help all over the place. And it's funny because they actually just beat the brakes off of the Arizona Cardinals, and I have the Washington Commanders wanting to get secondary help and Buda Baker being traded to them. A team that's leading the division right now maybe wants to make a bigger push, just kind of how like Houston did this last offseason, clearly saw how good they were, and they're like, oh shit, like we need to go more. We need more stuff, and maybe Washington makes a little bit more of a push with how well Jaden's playing right now.
I think if Adam Peters, Washington doesn't call up the Raiders and see what they want to do with Devontae, then they would be missing the boat a little bit there also. So yeah. I would honestly look at the Commanders to be very, very active. There's nothing wrong with when your young quarterback is playing really well, surrounding him with talent. A lot of teams might think that it's too early, but there's so much parity in the NFL year in, year out. At this point, if the Commanders win the division, is that going to surprise anyone? The Eagles might fire their head coach. The Cowboys look suspicious. Like this team's division at points has been the most competitive in the NFL. So to have the Commanders rise out of that, like, you know, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Commanders go big at, you know, here on out the trade deadline. And Safety help would be excellent. Wide receiver help would be really good. So keep your eye on that. I wouldn't be surprised. They got a big game against the Browns because the Browns defense is still the Brown defense. If Jaden comes out and he only has 7 incompletions the last 2 weeks, that's a stupid ass number. We should have brought that up when we were talking about Jared Goff earlier, but 7 or 8 incompletions the past 2 weeks. That's just freaking nutty. So let's see what he can do against the Browns defense.
Didn't he only have 2? Didn't he only have 2 last week? And then he had 4 this week?
Then even better.
6, yeah. So no, absolutely, I'm right there with you. We brought up Amari Cooper and a team that I think could use a little bit of some wide receiver help, and we already talked about Amari potentially moving on. Cooper's in the last year of his deal. They didn't want to actually extend him in the offseason. Getting some type of capital back for him is probably the best thing right now. And I think a team that could potentially use another wide receiver out there, because you're not sure what wide receiver is going to pop up, and during that week is the LA Chargers. Could use a guy out there in the bowl. So I think they're a team that could potentially go after a guy like that, kind of test him out, see where he goes, and maybe be Justin Herbert's favorite target for at least the remainder of the season.
Well, I wouldn't hate that at all. Ladd has been really good. You know, he was averaging
good.
He's averaging like 2.88 yards per route run. I think for our own personal reasons, Ladd McConkey is going to be an interesting guy to keep a lookout on the rest of the season.
Absolutely.
He's been really, really good. He's allowed Quentin Johnson to look like a decent wide receiver because he catches every target. I hate to be the guy that talks about the white slot guy, but my goodness, they just make them somewhere in a factory and they pump them out and they just keep doing what they do. So Ladd and Wes Welker and
they got
Amendola
Cole Beasley out there.
Cole Beasley, like they just it keeps without the weird vaccine crap that Cole Beasley does. Ladd is just Ladd, and I would love to see them add some wide receiver help. And I know Amari Cooper's had his drop problems, but I just really wonder when you look at a situation like Cleveland, how motivated anyone can be on that team right now.
I'm right there with you. Did you have any more guys that you were wanting to move around?
No, that was on top of my list.
I only have one more, and I have Detroit. They have I already talked about a little bit earlier. They have some secondary issues. They drafted 2 corners, Ennis Rakestraw and Terrion Arnold. Terrion Arnold showing flashes of some type of brilliance, having some issues. I want to talk about that a little bit later with the rookie check-in here pretty soon. But a guy who has been getting phone calls about in the offseason and might get some more is a Jonathan Jones from the Patriots. Clearly kind of out of place right now on a Patriots team that is going to be moving forward and rebuilding with a younger team. He's 31 years old. It doesn't seem like he's going to fit on that team here in the next couple of years. So again, getting some draft capital, moving on from a guy who still puts out very good numbers and he's been still very solid, to a team that needs him like Detroit to make that second push that they need is going to be fantastic for them. So I think targeting a corner, but specifically Jonathan Jones, might be on the lookout here in the next 4 weeks. Moving on to our second headline for this week, and then we can get into the week 5 stuff. I want to go ahead and look at the rookies. We did a lot of work on the rookies this past offseason, scouted out a ton of guys, a lot of texting back and forth. Go back and look at our rankings for every single position and the multiple mock drafts we did and the in-depth conversations we had about these certain guys. I want to know 4 weeks through the season, just about a quarter of the way through the season now, who's looking good, who needs improvement, and do you want to see any more of any type of guy? Looking at the rookie specifically. So go ahead and start it out. Who's looking good for you? Again, who needs improvement? You can start negative, start positive, wherever you want to start, Drew. I'm okay with.
I'm going to start again positive. Andrew Phillips. I talked about him earlier this year. He's been really, really good for the Giants. They got a couple young guys out there that are doing really, really well. Malik Neighbors handed Trayvon Diggs his ass a couple times in that game. Unfortunately, he went out with a concussion, really kind of stopped any hope the Giants had. Neighbors looks like the truth. He looks like the truth. And this may end up being a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson argument. Maybe not to that level. I'm not saying these guys turn into those guys, but it's like Justin Jefferson is far and away amazing, but Jamar Chase is just, I mean, the most solid, best consolation prize you could ever think of in your life behind him. And it really just think, the Malik Neighbors, the Rome Odunze, the Marvin Harrison Jr., just a solid batch of wide receivers. And, but really the conversations about Andrew Phillips, he's just been so good. And the rookie corners have been very topsy-turvy. Matter of fact, the number one rookie I put on my list here was Cooper DeJean, and the Eagles fans are just clamoring at this point to see him. Avonte Maddox has not been good this season. Big surprise to anyone that knows anything about Avonte Maddox. I don't know if it's a Vic Fangio thing, not wanting to play Cooper DeJean, or if he's just not looking as good as we thought he was going to be. Obviously, I had big concerns about what position he was going to play in the NFL before the draft. But yeah, I mean, Andrew Phillips, he's just been out of this world so far.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I left a couple guys off my list because I knew you mentioned some guys previously, and Andrew Phillips was one of those guys you mentioned a little bit last week, so I thought maybe you put him on here. I mentioned Jaden Daniels and how I wanted to kind of go off about him a little bit because he made me eat crow, and I'm going to turn around and I'm gonna tell you all the great things about him now at this point. Now that he's playing as well as he has, for me, how I ordered this personally is I ordered it with 3 guys who look elite, 2 guys who look great, and then 2 guys or 1 guy who has flashes, needs improvement, and 1 guy who just looked bad overall. And for me, Jaden Daniels is part of that group that looks elite. 87 completions on 106 attempts. 87 completions on 106 attempts. 82.1 completion percentage is now the highest for a quarterback in the first 4 games of a season. Not just for a rookie, for a season with a minimum of 75 attempts. Highest percentage of any player in 4 game span at that any point in their career since 1950. The Commanders' offense is off to a historic start in terms of the expected points added per game at 16.9. They are the 9th best offense through a season's first 4 weeks since 2002. 42 points against Arizona, 38 against Cincy. The Commanders now have scored 38 points in consecutive games for the first time since 1991, weeks 11 and 12 in that week. And then Washington offense through 4 games has 23 scoring drives, 19 incompletions, and just 4 punts. They are the second team in Super Bowl era with more scoring drives and incomplete passes for their first 4 games, joining the 1973 Rams. And a lot of that has to do with the man himself, Jaden Daniels. Again, I'll admit when I'm wrong. Maybe Drew won't, but I'll admit when I'm wrong. And I'm very glad to admit that
I'm never wrong.
Jaden Daniels looks great. Christian Watson. Jaden Daniels looks great, and he's playing great. And I want to see guys succeed just like you. So, again, for me in that category, he's a guy that looks elite. And then just one more guy who looks elite out of and then I'll jump back to you. You already mentioned him. Malik Neighbors looks elite, leads the NFL with 35 receptions, 5 more than Nico Collins, which we raved about earlier in the podcast. Second with 386 yards, tied for third with 3 touchdown receptions as well. Neighbors' 35 receptions is the second highest in a 4-game total to start a career in league history. Puka Nacua, obviously we saw the season that he had last year, raved about him, obviously all last year. 39 catching is in his first 4 NFL games and just last year. So his 386 yards is the 8th highest in a 4-game total. He's the first player with two 10 reception and 100-yard games in his first 4 games in a Giants uniform, and he joins Nacua last year as the only player to do 2 in such games in their first 4 contests. So we raved and we saw how much Puka Nacua did and how good he was, especially coming out of nowhere, essentially. Neighbors, we obviously knew about him this entire draft process, and he looks amazing and doing it basically by himself, being targeted 52 times out of the 142 total pass attempts, including 1 that he threw himself. A 35.9% is the highest in the NFL for that target share by himself on a really bad team. So again, in the category,
maybe the Giants need
elite,
to go get Devontae.
Yeah, maybe. So
or
again,
go call up the Panthers and get Deontay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get some help from Malik before he wears down at week 10.
Yeah, because I don't want to see him with constant concussion problems or anything like that. It sucked to see him go down at the end of the game last week, even though he's playing Dallas. It just sucks. You don't want to see stuff like that. Who else is on the list for you on these rookies?
You know, we've done a great job of highlighting a lot of the highest rated rookies in the league. We talked about Ladd already. He's right behind Malik Neighbors, obviously nowhere near the gaudy stats, but the Chargers don't run the ball like that. We talked about Andrew Phillips, TeAndre Sweat, obviously. Brock Bowers, this is the fourth consecutive week I've mentioned him. He's second in receiving yards amongst all tight ends, not rookies, just amongst all tight ends. He's already a top 5, top 7 player in his position, probably. Tight ends are just so weird year in and year out. But I wanted to shout out Mr. Jordan Whittington for the Los Angeles Rams, because this was not a player that we talked about much. Obviously, a 6th or 7th round draft pick. Cooper Kupp goes down, Puka Nacua goes down. You're like, oh, the 49ers are going to smash the Rams. They got no one to throw the ball to. Well, he's been fantastic. And with a rookie class that was highlighted with so many wide receivers, poor Xavier Legette, he's got absolutely no one throwing him to the ball over there. But I don't think we talked about Jordan Whittington too much in the run up to the draft. So shout out to him. He's come out. You already mentioned Brian Thomas earlier. He's been fantastic. He's Trevor Lawrence's favorite target, which obviously I don't think means much right now because they're terrible. But and then all the offense, the tackles have been really good. Zach Frazier has been fantastic.
There's my other guy for looks elite.
All right, cool. Yep. JCP hasn't been playing much. I don't know if he played.
I know he didn't play like the first 3 weeks. He played last week.
I don't know if I've seen anything on Graham Barton. Tyler Guyton. Zach Frazier looks like a dude. So does Cooper. He looks really good too. But Zach Frazier looks like a dude.
No, absolutely. Real quick on Jackson Powers Johnson, he has played 80 offensive snaps so far this season. So just as a shout out to that. Zach Frazier is my last guy in the looks elite category. Joe obviously is going to get a shout out. We've already talked about him a ton. Talisi Fuanga, we've been mentioning him a ton these past couple of weeks. But Zach Frazier is a guy we haven't talked about. He's played 100% of the snaps, 0 penalties allowed, 0 sacks allowed, and as a run blocker, he has a 80.1 PFF run blocking grade, which ranks 6th amongst NFL centers right now. So he looks pretty good. He looks elite at this point. As a guy we really haven't brought up a whole lot, but he's a guy who should be mentioned with those other guys that we've mentioned a ton.
And the main reason for that is when you take a tackle at 5, when you take Joe Alt, right? And then Joe Alt comes out and is good. Okay, duh. You took him at 5. Zach Frazier was the 60th, 65, somewhere right in there. Obviously he went in the second round, I think. So he's come out and he's been fantastic, which the higher rated the higher, although I was close. There've been a lot of injuries with these rookie offensive linemen, so that's been tough to watch. And Zach Frazier, when you slot a player in there, much like I mentioned Dominic Pooney earlier, when you slot these players in and they just show up every week and do their job and do it well, it's just really refreshing because offensive line is not an easy position. The defensive linemen, the explosiveness, that is far surpassed the offensive linemen in recent years because those dudes get paid. So I think all these athletic freaks are switching to defense anyway. Shout out to Zach Frazier. He's been awesome.
A guy that was really hard for me not to put in the elite category, and he was so close, like he was riding the fine line, but I didn't want to put too many guys in the elite category. So I just put like top of the great category for me. It has to be Mr. Jared Verse from the LA Rams. He's ranked 5th overall in the league for individual pressure rate at 18%, helping the entire the defensive pressure rate. The Rams lead the league in pressure rate right now at 41.3% of dropbacks through 4 games. Again, 18% for his individual. He leads all rookies with 17 pressures. Through 4 weeks, his 28.8% pass rush win rate ranks only 2nd to a Mr. Potential Defensive Player of the Year front runner and Aiden Hutchinson, who has 18 more pressures than any other edge rusher in football right now. So just, again, 17 pressures for the rookie. Aiden Hutchinson has 18 more than every other person in the league. So just putting that out there. And then just last week, the week before, against the Bears, he had a 50% pass rush win rate. So Throwing it out there. Jared Verse looks fantastic. I knew he looked great against the run because that's what he looked like he'd be good at. See how his power worked in the NFL, and it's working. So,
Do you know what Jared Verse leads the league in?
what's that?
Missed tackles. He has 11.
Oof. Yeah. So there we go.
So shout out to you not putting him in your elite category, because if you had, I'd have freaking pounded you for it.
Another guy I didn't put in the elite category is another wide receiver. I'm not sure if you wanted to talk about him. It's a very obvious Mr. Marvin Harrison Jr. at the looks great category. Didn't put him in the elite category. For me, it's only one reason only. He seems to not get targeted in certain lengths of the game or certain, like the second halves of games. He just kind of disappears. His 4 touchdowns, which tied with Justin Jefferson for leading the league, but his 4 touchdown receptions all in the first quarter. Outside of that, he kind of like goes MIA here and there. Again, looks fantastic, but I'd like to see a little bit more before we bump him up in that category that looks elite. So we have another check-in here. Second half of the year, I like to see him in that category, but he has to do a little bit more for me to actually be able to put him there.
The thing about the Cardinals offense, it's very similar. So right now there's a lot of freak out in 49er land about Brandon Ayuk and his production so far. But if you watch the 49ers offense, they are running absolutely nothing for Brandon Ayuk. They're not trying to get him going. They're not trying to. Is that probably Kyle Shanahan punishing him a little bit? Yes, it is. When you compare that to what's happening in New York, where everything is Malik Neighbors oriented, the Cardinals are a little bit of the same. They are not force feeding Marvin Harrison Jr. They are not going out of their way to make sure he gets 8, 10, 12 targets a game. Right. He had 2 touchdowns and like 140 yards in the first quarter the other day and then did nothing the rest of the game. So he is that player. In my opinion, he is that player that you can go out and say, listen, this man needs 12 targets this year. Yeah. I think it will continue to grow. But when you look at what Malik Neighbors is doing, if we have to rank him right now, I got Malik Neighbors at number 1 just because of everything. He is that offense right now.
You have to. Yeah.
And the other thing is again, when you're the first wide receiver off the board, you have to be a little more impressive. When you're the first, Jaden Daniels right now is kicking Caleb Williams' ass. Well, Caleb was number 1. If we could go back to the draft, would the Bears take Jaden Daniels? No, they would take Caleb. They would take Caleb. They would take Caleb. But right now, Jaden's in front of him. It just is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anyone else that you want to praise before you took some negatives there?
The corners have been interesting. Kool-Aid, he's had a couple good games, a couple down games. Obviously, Quinyon Mitchell, he's been okay. I think that we don't have the Sauce Gardner this year. I don't think we have the, oh man, Denver Broncos number 2. Pat Surtain. We don't have the Surtain this year. We don't have the Sauce Gardner this year. That just standout shutdown guy. But the corners have been good. It's tough to play corner in the NFL. Kool-Aid's been good. Kool-Aid's been okay, but I want to see more out of the corners. So I don't have one to shout out super loudly at this point. We'll see if Cooper DeJean can even get on the field going forward. Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to see a lot more out of Latu, but there is a certain player out there that's been absolutely awful. So are we going negative here, or are we just staying all nice on these rookies?
Just real quick on the corner, just Teron Arnold personally. He's been penalized 9 times in 4 games, which is a ton. And then he's been targeted 25 times for 16 receptions. So
damn.
So he's one where I'm like, I need to see a lot more out of you for a guy that kind of ranked a lot higher. Obviously, I think I had him as corner 5 for me personally. While I slowly pull that up on the side of me, I had him ranked at corner 3. Excuse me. Corner 5 was Nate Wiggins. So a guy who's ranked that high, I expect a little bit more out of him. But again, 25 times, 16 receptions in 4 games. He clearly has flashes, and he clearly looks good at points. But that's a lot And if you put stock in the PFF grade, 47.6 up to this point. So not sure how much you're going to get there. And it's not just going to be like, well, what about the run coverage? Well, like the run grade. Well, I know he's been pretty decent in the run. So yeah, you can go negative because there's a certain tackle, obviously, that I want to go ahead and cover for the negativity spot. So
You know who's been terrible and has done absolutely nothing for his team?
who is that?
Michael Penix.
That's not fair, man. Go on. You can't control that.
Are you going to talk about Guyton? Is that who you want to? Because so we could talk about tackles for a second. I won't focus on Guyton. J.C. Latham has not been great.
You're right, absolutely.
Again, he's in Tennessee, so I'm not exactly sure what was expected out of that situation. Will Levis is all over the place. I don't know how you're supposed to hold your blocks, and you give up pressures and you give up sacks. Will Levis is way over here where the hell he's not supposed to be. There's a blocking scheme for a reason. You got to play quarterback within that blocking scheme.
Yeah, but the thing is when I'm watching J.C. Latham and I'm watching how he's playing in tape, he obviously came out as a tackle. That was how he came out. And I told you, I think he's a guard. I don't think this guy's a tackle at all. And then you draft him as high as you did as a tackle, and he's looked this bad. It's like, for me personally, I want to point the finger and be like, I told you, not to you, but like to, Tennessee Titans, like, I told you so. They should have listened to me. They hit me up and I told them, and they didn't listen to me. And I don't know what's going on there, but I was not the biggest fan. I was not the biggest fan of Latham, and especially you move him sides as well. So I'm not a fan of that personally. Not look great. Again, I thought he was more of a guard than a tackle. I love offensive lineman tape. That's like my shit. And there's certain guys that I love to hang my hat on and be like, hey, I was kind of right about this one. And J.C. Latham so far is like, hey, I told you this motherfucker is probably a guard, not a tackle. And especially with this next guy as well. Unless you have another tackle you want to talk about, I said that this guy is not going to translate the best. So Latham was my tackle 6, by the way, if he was a tackle, and I still put him down as a guard. He was my second highest rated guard in my tackle spots. But yeah, 6 spot.
I mean,
did you have anyone else?
No, I mean, some of these guys have been really bad. Yeah. I mean, Amarius Mims has not been good.
Yeah, he's definitely struggled.
Jordan Morgan.
He got drafted high, but we knew that Amarius Mims was going to struggle being so raw coming out too. He might come into his own, but very, very raw guy with every bit of athleticism that you can count on with flashes.
Yeah, Jordan Morgan has not been that good. He's been hurt.
I wasn't high on him.
The guy the Chiefs took, he's got a funky name.
Oh, Kingsley Sumatia. Yeah, I wasn't high on him either. They took him super high.
I know you're going to go on a rant on this Cowboys thing. So before you go there, you got anyone on the defensive side?
Defense side of the ball that looks bad. We
could talk about something Dallas related, not your player, just name sake.
You're good. Go ahead.
Dallas Turner has not been good. We talked about that. There was teams mocking him, and like there was mocks with him in the top 8-10. We're like, no. Latu's number one. He's had like 14 pressures in the last 2 weeks. He's getting close to breaking out. But another guy I had really high who's not doing much of shit, doesn't look very good, is Chop Robinson.
I was just looking him up. Yeah,
his run grade is absolutely terrible.
To be fair, we knew Chop was going to be a bad run. Like he's a pass rush specialist. If you're using him on the run, you might have to look at yourself a little different because that's never what Chop is ever going to be.
And ever. He's gotten a pressure in every game, and he's a part-time player. So if you're only putting him on the field for a handful of snaps and he's going to get a pressure, that's good. But it's just his explosiveness. You'd think he would bring more to the table. So and shout out. I have one more loser. I have one more rookie loser.
Go ahead.
And I'm going to go with a quarterback, and I'm going to say JJ McCarthy because it's not good what's happening for him in Minnesota right now, man. I'm right there with you. Yep. Baker Mayfield got a 3-year, $100 million contract. That's got Sam Darnold written all over it, dude. If he keeps playing like this, 3 year, $100 million, and now you're JJ McCarthy's on his 5th year option. By the time JJ, now trust me, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. But oh boy, man, if Sam the man keeps doing what he's doing, it's going to be a tough decision for them in the offseason.
It's gonna be fun at least to have the conversation for us. So, last guy obviously on the looks bad. I said Terron Arnold, was a guy I need to see improvement, but he's not played well. Tyler Guyton, I mentioned it. He just looks bad. At the end of the day, he looks bad. We had the conversation pre-draft process, or it was during the draft, excuse me. Who is the guy that you would not want to see right here? And I was like, Guyton is probably the last guy I want to see. And of course, who would we go with? And I tried to have a little bit of faith because the Cowboys draft offensive lineman, but I really wasn't a huge fan, especially he's a tackle. I said he's probably a guard. And then you move him to the other side as well, to the left tackle position. It's so hard to see. A guy who is winning off of raw athleticism, but didn't really have a whole lot of flashes. He currently ranks 81st among offensive tackles with an overall PFF grade of 52.7. He's allowed 4 sacks in 4 games, 1 quarterback hit, 6 quarterback hurries through 269 snaps. Also, committing 7 fucking penalties. So I don't know what the fuck is going on there, but and then he had the audacity to criticize the refs afterwards. Shut the fuck up. I don't get it. It's your fault. You dumb fuck. You have like 4 false starts. That's your fault. I don't know what we're talking about. If we're talking about like the first game of the season and we're looking at the Baltimore Ravens and we're looking at Ronnie Stanley not being able to keep his fucking waist, where the center is, that's his fault. And he should be able to do that and be like, oh, like the refs were kind of picking on me for it, but other guys, they were doing it too. Okay, sure, maybe. I understand it. Tyler Guyton, bro, you've played 4 games in the NFL. You don't know what the fuck you're doing. You're a completely raw prospect, and it clearly shows. And maybe just be quiet and say, yeah, I have 7 penalties and 4 sacks, and I look like shit in every single fucking game. So, yeah, let's relax a little bit. So that's my feelings on Guyton. Obviously, I want to see him succeed being from the Cowboys, but there's a pretty big portion of me that loves to be correct, just like Drew does. And I love to be right, And when I'm right about something, it makes me feel really good. So for me, it's a win-win situation where if he's good, it's good for the Cowboys. But if he's bad, it's good for me because then I get to talk shit about it and that I was right. So that's my last section on these rookies and our last section for week 4 overall.
I think the tough part for me about Guyton's performance on Thursday was it was coming against Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah.
Like that's not Aiden Hutchinson out there. That's Thibodeau who came into the league with a lot of fanfare
next week, by the way.
Yeah, man. I just
who made Joe Alt look bad, but he was also like the top ranked tackle, coming into that week. And then obviously he made him look like not dog shit, but he made him look bad. And that's TJ Watt. And now you have Tyler Guyton, and he's just gonna fucking eat him up, which our other tackle fucking sucks anyway. So go ahead.
Going back to a little positivity off of the suicide ledge for Cowboys fans, maybe a corner that we were a little wrong about just in terms of maybe having him the 5th or 6th best, but Nate Wiggins has looked really, really good. It's too bad that he keeps dropping fucking interceptions. I think he has
corner, dude.
I know, but I think he has like 3 drops, but he got the start. He had a great coverage grade, over 80 or something. I didn't write it down because I wasn't sure I'd get to him, but I just know that he keeps dropping interceptions. So shout out to Nate. He's a little guy, but I like to see the players that we scout really hard ball out. And it was really tough to put the corners together this offseason. And
especially his biggest knock being he's light. He's small, he's light, and but luckily he's held up. He's only allowed 6 receptions so far in the year, which is pretty good when you look at 16 receptions allowed for Terron Arnold. So yeah, shout out to him, man, because that's pretty awesome. Again, even if we scout someone hard or we don't look at someone in a positive light at first, if they succeed, we benefit as the fans to be able to watch it at the end of the day, and we like to talk about it.
The one thing I'll say, just to try to get you off your rant, make you feel a little better, is it's not like you took Tyler Guyton and there was a stud tackle that went a couple picks after, Yeah. Oh, and shout out this. Please hold. We are holding and we are liking it. I want to, because I have talked so much shit on this man's name, so I am going to give him a shout out where it's due. If I can even find the damn guy, because he's so far down on the list. There he is, way down there at the bottom. Your boy Mozzie Smith. He had an excellent run blocking grade this past week against whoever the Giants played at running back and Daniel Jones. He had a couple big tackles and finally looked like an NFL player. So shout out to Mozzie Smith.
Yep, absolutely. At least for 1 week.
Still ranked 35.7 overall, the 121st best defensive tackle in the league, but he finally had a good game, which is more than I could say for like Tyree Wilson of the Raiders.
Yeah, that's true. Moving away from the week 4 stuff and looking for at the week 5 stuff, just a couple of questions for you, Drew. Number one is we've already kind of mentioned it, and this one's just kind of a question just overall. It's a pretty obvious answer, but we just got to talk about it in one way or another. And that's should Justin Fields be the starter for Pittsburgh?
Yes. Trade Russell Wilson away. Get rid of that dude.
Absolutely. I think
it's not even a conversation. It might have been a conversation. Not anymore. 360 yards, 3 touchdowns. Russell Smith hasn't done that since 2017.
Yeah.
I made that up.
830 passing yards for 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, 145 rushing yards, and 3 touchdowns on the ground as well. I raved about Jaden Daniels, so I'm going to do the same thing a little bit about Justin Fields right here for the first 4 weeks at least. He's only had 1 interceptable pass. That was the pass that was picked off. He's had 6 money throws this year that is ranked 2nd in the league, a 79.7% true completion percentage that ranks 3rd, and 83.3% pressure completion percentage that ranks 1st in the league, 75% red zone completion percentage that's 3rd, and a 86.6% catchable pass rate, and that ranks 1st in the league. So again, we've talked a lot of shit about Justin Fields, especially in this offseason, and we've had a lot of discussions about him. And for him to do what he's doing is it's incredible to see. 3-1. He is the very clear and concise starter in Pittsburgh. Going against the Dallas Cowboys this week, I get to see up close and personal on what he's going to do Sunday night. Actually, Drew and I are both going to be able to see what that's going to happen Sunday night. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially with the Cowboys' run defense looking absolutely piss poor. We signed a pass rusher off of some practice squad, so maybe he's going to help us with D-Law being out and Micah being out. And so it's going to be, it might be a rough game. And Justin Fields might genuinely have like 2 minutes in the pocket per pass. So, unless Mozzie Smith decides to have another good game, which, I'm not exactly holding my breath.
Is Micah playing?
I don't think Micah's going to play. High ankle sprain.
Y'all might get freaking put to sleep in this run game this week. Luckily, your offense is still good enough to keep up with it, but it might be nasty. It might be nasty on the run game.
Latest on Micah.
You guys are gonna look like you're gonna make Najee look like a top 10 draft pick again,
right? And everyone's gonna that's gonna be for all you fantasy owners who are gonna want to sell high on Najee. It might be that time. Yeah, Cowboys plan to be without Micah Parsons. That was as of 22 hours ago. So yeah, no new news on Micah. Still the same exact thing. So pretty clear and obvious right there for Justin. And if they go and catch a win against Dallas, and depending on who does well or who does poor inside of our top 10 for our power rankings, go check that out. Check that out if you're not watching the full podcast, full show. But depending on how they do, they're going to catapult themselves back inside that top 10 and maybe a little bit higher than that. So again, Justin Fields, the other starter. I don't think he's actually in Drew's studio anymore. I think it's someone else or maybe the entire team at this point. Do you have anything else on Justin, or do you want the second question?
There's Russell Wilson. No.
Yeah, it's your guy, dude. How long until we see a Mr. Drake Maye's debut? And do you think the Patriots are doing the right thing by continuously sitting him?
We do not see Drake Maye's debut. He's already debuted technically.
Starting debut.
Not going to happen.
When?
How
long?
next
Not
year.
at all this season? Okay.
Not without an injury. Let me read something to you. Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
34.8, 39.1, 63.4, 53.9, 67.2. Those are the PFF grades for the New England Patriots offensive line. If you want me to translate that into explain like I'm 5 terms, it roughly computes out to dog shit.
Roughly.
Have you ever heard of Kevin Givens?
Yeah, 2.5 sacks this last week. Whoop whoop.
Okay, before he had 2.5 sacks last week, have you ever heard of Kevin Givens?
Hell no.
All right, Kevin Givens been on the 49ers for a while. He ain't never had 2.5 sacks before. Okay,
he almost got a shout out this week.
I thought about putting him out there, but then I'm like,
he's on my dock.
But the only reason why I didn't do that is because Kevin Givens owes both of those sacks to Nick. Because Nick, like, Jacoby's like, and he ran right into Kevin Givens and fell over. I'm like, give that shit to Nick where it belongs, man. This is bullshit. It's like
an assist.
It's like I always said. Alden Smith got all of them sacks because Justin Smith just grabbed every offensive lineman and was like, and then Alden was like, sack him, right?
Yep.
Yeah, no, the offensive line for the Patriots is dog shit. Jalen Polk, that dude, he made a really impressive play that didn't count, but he went up between 2 defenders and brought the ball down. Unfortunately, he was out of bounds. But that is my dude, only because of Madden, though.
Yep.
So yeah, you can't put this dude out there. There's no reason for it. Let him learn, let him sit, invest in the offensive line next year, get an upgrade on the skill players. I actually really like Ramondre Stevenson as a back. He's got a 64.7 run grade. I don't know how the hell he's supposed to run the ball. Like, I watched this game, and so when Fred Warner had his pick 6, which was a great play, it wasn't a bad play by Jacoby Brissett. I mean, he probably shouldn't have made the throw, but it was a Superman jump up catch, and then he freaking rolled into the end zone going 2 miles an hour. I clicked into a website that I won't mention on air because it's not legal here in the state of California. And I put $2,500 on the 49ers to win that game after that pick. They were up 13-0, and I put 20. And then that asshole Isaac Garendo fumbles the ball coming out of the half, and they score a touchdown. And I almost exploded at work. But I put 2,500. I do this a lot, right? Like at the first week of the season when Alabama is playing Sac State, I put a massive amount of money on Alabama because I know it's, even though it only pays back a fraction of what I bet, I get my money back plus the winnings. It's guaranteed, right? But $2,500 on the 49ers at that point because I was so sure this is the most lackluster team I've ever seen in my life. Like, nothing they did scared me. Their defense looked awful. Yep. And it's funny, like, it was one of Brock Purdy's – it was an amazing game to watch Brock Purdy play. But statistically, if you look at his incompletions, he was almost at 50% completion rate because he just kept fucking hucking it down the field. He's like, you know what? There is zero chance we lose this game. Let's just deep ball. He threw a deep ball to freaking Conley, who is 57 years old. He shouldn't even be out there. Chris Conley at this point. He made a great play in the Super Bowl. Let me take that back. But he's just hucking it deep to Debo on a go route. Debo's like the slowest fast wide receiver you ever met in your life. Right. Juwan Jennings, hucking it deep to him. Very, very slow 40. Triple coverage to George Kittle. Screw it. Patriots suck. Let's just do it. Right. And this is a defense that has Christian Gonzalez and, Jack Jones and all that stuff. And he was just like, yeah, you can't put Drake May back there. You're just going to ruin him. You're going to Bryce Young him. You just cannot do it.
I'm right there with you. Just a quote from Gerard Mayo. Quoted saying, Drake's been getting a ton of reps on the show team, and he's approached that process the right way. He doesn't want to know what the defense is doing right now. He doesn't want to know the coverage. He's going out there, going through his reads, and we talk about it all the time. Just because you're on the show team doesn't mean you can't work on your fundamentals and your progressions, and he's done a good job for that. Something interesting to highlight, I'm not sure if they should bring Drake May out for the season, but again, something interesting to highlight is he's gotten 30% of the snaps on the first team offense every single week in practice. So
that's
just
smart. NFL teams don't do that. That's smart.
Just unusual, but just to highlight it a little bit. So I'm big Drake May guy.
What does Jacoby Brissett need the snaps for? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You put the offensive game plan in, and then give Drake Maye the snaps. That's so smart. I actually really like that.
Yeah. So I'm a big Drake Maye guy, so I'm hoping that he has all the success in the world. Please don't ruin him. Please don't mess this up.
Bryce Young
If that means sit him for the entire year, that's okay with me. 100%. That team clearly needs a lot of work. Drew and I have a Madden league where we pick the 2 worst teams in the league, and the Patriots were one of those teams that were picked for very good reason. A lot of work that needed to be done with that team. Still needs work on that team. But
Drake May's like 97 overall, and Jalen Polk is a beast. So miss me on all that. I just throw 55 interceptions this season. That's my fault.
There you go. Looking at our third question, another quarterback question, and it's: is there a fix to the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence? Like, what's going on? Is there an immediate fix for them? What's going on?
I don't have thoughts on this. It's kind of last week we talked about the Bengals and issues with them. Shout out to that fan that was like super reasonable in their responses. That never happens. Y'all are crazy out there. You guys just think that your teams are,
Super Bowl bound, bro. Absolutely.
I don't know what you do with the Jaguars. They got the Colts this week. It might be a chance for them to get a W. Trevor Lawrence is supposed to be okay, but Jacksonville they're 27th in passing yards.
Yep. 28th I have them on this one actually. But yeah.
I everybody that was drafting Travis Etienne early in fantasy, I was like, stop doing that. No, don't do it. That dude broke down last year. You know, it happens all the time. Look at Tony Pollard. Everyone's like, get Zeke out of there. Give Tony Pollard all the carries. That's not going to work. It's change pace for a reason. That's not going to work. Same thing with Etienne. Like, they need to trade for Damon Pierce from the Texans or something and get some pound the rock in there, something like that. And you have decent wide receivers. Like, I don't know. I don't know why it's working. Their defense is terrible. They're 30th in the league in points against per game. They're 30th in the league in yards. They're 31st in the league in passing yards against them. And they're 22nd in total yards for offense. It's just everything is terrible. It's like
26 in sacks per game. Like, they're not getting pressures, and
what I think happened.
They might have a pass rusher that they just paid a fuck ton of money to. So has 1 sack in 4 games, and
I think that. Well, and even going back to when they drafted, who's the pass
Trayvon
rusher?
Walker.
Yeah, what has he got, a sack or 2 so far? Congratulations. I think what happened in the offseason, I think maybe Mac Jones possessed Trevor Lawrence. And that's what happens, because this is some trash can ass quarterbacking.
One sack in 4 games for Mr. Trayvon Walker as well. But at least you're not paying him top edge rusher money. So there's
if you.
He had 11 sacks last year, by the way. So, just want to throw that out there. We didn't talk about Trayvon last year, but
you know how I know you're bad is when you're hanging out on a list and I go to the bottom of the list and you're down there with Bryce Young. Will Levis is down there. Oof. Poor Caleb Williams is down there. Not really his fault, but
yeah.
What are the Jags doing good right now? And their these owners with all the money. Say something for a second. I'm gonna pull up his quote. It was terrible. Did you see it?
You're talking about Shad Khan? Oh, absolutely. I have it in my notes. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Read it.
Yeah. So, I don't have the exact, but I know that Shad Khan said that this was the best team in franchise history, and it's a short franchise history. But for this to be the best team in franchise history, this is your owner's expectations after paying your quarterback $275 million, but he's averaging less than 200 yards a game on that $275 million contract, and then you pay your franchise pass rusher, and then he has 1 sack in 4 games, and then again, you're 0-4, and you have no playoff expectations now at this point, but Shad Khan still doubles down on that best in franchise history. And then you rank bottom in the league in almost every single category outside of rushing offense, which ranks like 13th. So you're middle of the pack. Good job, I guess. And then your rushing defense is decent, top 10. Outside of that, passing, sacks, and total yards allowed, total yards per game on your offensive side is all bad. For me personally, with how bad this defense is, they gutted their entire defensive coaching staff, and the guy that's kind of left over now at that point is a Mr. Doug Peterson, and you might have to start looking at him to be, out the door at this point, because defense is looking bad. You gut the entire coaching staff, and it's still this bad. You can't point the finger there for a second year in a row. After that, from the fired coaches from that defensive coaching staff, they said, quote, the problems are still in the building in Jacksonville. And they might know what they're talking about there, especially with, again, the head coach might be the problem at that point. So,
well, and Trent Baalke is a terrible GM. He was the guy who drafted the all ACL team for the 49ers. I don't know. It's Jacksonville, so they're always going to be a little irrelevant anyway. But they had a hell of a playoff game last year where Trevor Lawrence threw roughly, I think, 63 interceptions in the first half, and then they came back in the second half. But it's just, you know what else is really weird for them right now is that Doug Peterson is like going to the wall to defend his coaches and kind of putting a lot of this on the players, and that's just super abnormal.
I don't know what to do.
It's
Okay,
super abnormal for head coaches to behave
in
this
public,
way.
In a press conference like that, red flag.
Yeah,
absolutely.
This has got. They're gonna go get the OC for the Lions type thing written all over it because you got to. So this is my thing. I was making an argument with there's a guy at work who's the most passionate Raiders fan you've ever seen. The one thing we can say about Raiders fans, they're just passionate. And I told him, I said, the thing I don't like about Antonio Pierce is when everything is going wrong for your quarterback, Antonio Pierce can do nothing about it. He doesn't know the X and O's. He doesn't do the scheme. He doesn't know anything. He's just going to go give him a pat on the ass and say, hey, let's try better out there. When shit's going bad for Dak, Mike McCarthy schemed that whole thing. Sean McVay, Andy Reid, LaFleur, the Kubiaks, Kyle Shanahan. These guys can go talk to their quarterbacks and put their mind back together. What exactly can this coaching staff do for Trevor Lawrence right now? I mean, and I feel bad. I feel bad for him because you got Urban Meyer, and then you got this, you got that, and it just sucks. It's like it's got a lot of eerie Alex Smith similarities right now down in Jacksonville. Matter of fact, now that I said that out loud, I really love that comparison. 6 different offense coordinators in your first 7 years. They got to go get a guy. They got to get the OC from the Lions.
Ben Johnson,
Ben Johnson. I know he wants millions of dollars a year to be a head coach. Pay the guy and go get a guy that can sit down and mold. There's a reason why we want these quarterbacks. There's a reason why I said I want Bryce Young on the Rams, to get with the guy that can help him. And, it just, I don't know. I don't looking at their schedule, I don't see a win for them. Yeah, maybe this week against the Colts, but that's it.
We don't know how much, obviously you said you don't want to take credit, like the team doesn't want to take credit for it, but like we really don't know unless we're inside the building how much, and inside his head, how much being with a guy like Kyle Shanahan helped Sam Darnold, so, it very well could have been that deciding factor for him for what, let him open his eyes a little bit and then come into the situation where he had weapons around him and being able to actually perform well. So being with those type of offensive minded guys and giving them, these quarterbacks, the opportunity to perform at the highest level possible with some of the best coaches out there, it's probably the best situation you could give Trevor Lawrence at this point.
Well, look at Baker Mayfield with the Rams.
Yep, there you go.
He was
that game saved his career. The whole thing saved his career.
Let me see. He was, I guess he was 22 at 35 for 230 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. But he'd been on the Rams for 48 hours.
Yep.
And, it's just, I don't know why teams continue to hire the way they do. I think it's a mistake. That's why We talk about Belichick because he's the greatest coach of all time, but who's he bringing in? He's bringing in McDaniels, you know what I mean, as his offensive coordinator. Go get Ben Johnson. Look at what they're like. Jared Goff was cast out of LA, maybe it was St. Louis at the time, I don't remember, by Sean McVay, and they've turned that dude around, and he's, they got a high-powered offense out there. Go get somebody that can help your quarterback, because right now, you and me were talking in the offseason, should they even pay this dude? And it feels like they just pay these quarterbacks no matter what now. But I don't know, the Jaguars just got to blow it up or something, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. Now, looking at the segment that we have every single week, looking at our upset of the week, we got to get like a theme song or something once I get the soundboard over here for the upset of the week. Stuff we do consistently. Yeah. We got to get
on top of it, producer.
All right, relax. Upset of the week. Drew, I already kind of like flash mine a little bit if you're listening to the entire show.
I can't watch this. I can't watch you say that. I'm just going to turn my camera around.
Drew is 2-2. I finally got a win at 1-3 by going out there and going on a whim, and taking the Broncos over the Jets. And as terrible as the game was, and -7 passing yards in the first half of a game is pretty bad for Mr. Bo Nix, who we haven't talked about all day today. But I'm not betting against them this time. I'm going with them, and we're going across the pond. And we're going Jets over the Minnesota Vikings. The Jets have the 6th ranked offensive line up to this point. That Minnesota Vikings, obviously the pass rush is incredibly good. Excuse me, the 5th ranked offensive line now up to this point. And I think it's time. I think it's time that they're going to drop a game. I think going across, I think this is it. I think the Jets can pull out a win. I went on a whim and I took the Broncos. I'm going out. I tried to take an easy one the week before with the Cardinals, and it didn't work for me. I'm going out on a limb again, and I'm taking another team that probably shouldn't win. That's why it's upset of the week. Probably shouldn't win, but I'm taking them anyways, and that is the New York Jets over the number 2 ranked for us, Minnesota Vikings. Go ahead. You're good. Speak to the people, Drew. The people.
I'm super excited to find out that at 9:30 in the morning, just so everybody knows, I love the Sunday morning games. I absolutely love them. I think it's great. I love setting my alarm clock up, getting early. I think it'd be nice actually to live on the East Coast where football doesn't start till 1. You get out in the morning, have some breakfast or golf or whatever. That would be nice. But for now, we live on the West Coast, and football starts at 6:30 in the morning, and it's fantastic. I want them to do this every week once they get into the season, because I'm locked in Thursday night for football, Friday for college, Saturday for college, Sunday for football, Monday for football, and then I take a little tiny break Tuesday to do my podcast. Wednesday, I purge myself of all the bullshit from the last week, and then I get geared up for the next week, and I'm ready to go. So I'm super excited to find out that at 9:30 in the morning on Sunday morning, you're going to take a L on this when the Minnesota Vikings smash the shit out of the New York Jets. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately for you, you're going to have to wait until Monday night at 8:30 to find out that I win again, and I'm 3-2 when the New Orleans Saints knock off the Kansas City Chiefs to go 3-2 and hand the Kansas City Chiefs their first loss this week on Monday Night Football.
Wow. I don't know what's crazier. Either one. So we're both saying that the 2 undefeated teams left in the league right now, we're going to go ahead and take a loss. So that's what we're both betting against right now.
Just so you know, I had 2 on here.
Yep.
I had a normal one, and I had a crazy as shit one. And just to give you a thought process to my mindset, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the Bengals to knock off the Ravens this week. Division game. Bengals are still a really good team. All that shit's normal. No, you want to say that the piece of shit Jets and the corpse of Aaron Rodgers is going to beat the Vikings? Well, screw you then. I am going to give you some validation as a Cowboys fan, because the Saints just keep losing, making the Cowboys look like whack. I'm going to give you some validation. New Orleans Saints are going to knock off Kansas City, which ain't much validation considering they don't have a wide receiver right now besides Xavier Worthy. But hey,
that's awesome.
If you're going to get crazy, I'm going to get crazy.
Beautiful.
So let's do it.
It's the always fun, always amazing upset of the week. You're going to have to stay tuned to see what our records are for the next week. But
we need intro and outro theme for that segment, by the way.
I'm right there with you.
And we need the air horn. When I say the New Orleans Saints are going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, we need some that's going to get edited out by the AI. I bet all these sounds, you're not going to be able to hear them, but
I know it's going to look funny. Well, Drew, we are at the 2 hour and 18-minute mark currently. Long podcast, but honestly, I think we put out some pretty good stuff.
Is it Wednesday yet?
It is not Wednesday yet. Maybe for the people on the East Coast, but not for us. Last thing, just shout out to everyone who's subscribing to the YouTube channel. We are currently at 110, growing pretty significantly and growing pretty quickly. If you stay to the end of it, if you're listening on YouTube, head over into our bio for our YouTube channel. I have all the links there for our TikTok and our Spotify and our Apple podcast. So if you want to listen there, whether you're on the road or whatnot, download our episodes. Go ahead and hit us up on there. If you're listening to us on Spotify, hit us up on YouTube. You can watch all the clips. You can watch the YouTube shorts. Hit us up on TikTok and get all the funny the clips there too. So hit us up on all social platforms that we have inside of our bios. We do appreciate it. Drew, before we sign off and we look forward to our Thursday, do you have anything left to say to people?
Yeah, just a quick question. Let's get this out here. You got a prediction for that Pittsburgh Steelers game?
Do you want me to be pessimistic? Because
I just want you to be truthful.
I don't feel good. It's a good defense, and it took a while for us to even get going against Baltimore. And that's a team that's kind of been up and down defensively. And this is a Pittsburgh Steelers defense that's really held their own. And Justin Fields looked fantastic. And they have a running game that can actually kind of blow us up. And we have no edge rushers right now currently. So, Marshawn Nealon, I'm excited to watch just because he's a rookie, and I'd like to see what he's going to do for this upcoming week. Going to get a starting shot in a starting position, but outside of that, man, I don't see us really taking a win home this week for Sunday Night Football. It's gonna be a sad Buffalo Wild Wings day.
Because I'm a little nervous that the freaking Cardinals are going to dunk on us. So I'm glad you're not feeling too confident either.
Awesome. All right. Well, that is all that we have for this week. And I shouldn't say that's all because, damn, we went a very long time. We do appreciate you sticking around to the end. Again, hit us up on all social platforms. And besides that, let's get out of here.